Chapter 3559. When he broke through to the third-layer Emperor realm, Yang Kai's soul had experienced an explosive increase, but compared to the current situation, that increase was simply insignificant. He had never expected that breaking through the final barrier with Yu Meng would give him such a huge benefit. However, although this was unexpected, it was also reasonable. The primordial yin of a woman who had successfully cultivated generally contained a strange kind of power, and the stronger the woman, the greater this power would naturally be. There were many secret arts in this world that used this kind of power to cultivate, but this kind of plucking yin-yang nourishing yang technique was generally extremely evil, and women who were plucked as cultivation furnaces generally ended up very miserable. The yin-yang joyous unification art that Yang Kai and Su Yang cultivated was similar to this kind of secret art, but this joyous unification art was not a simple plucking technique, but a dual cultivation secret art. Both parties could obtain some benefits from each other during dual cultivation, so to a certain extent, the yin-yang joyous unification art was an orthodox dual cultivation secret art, not an evil one. Yu Meng was a demon saint, so her primordial yin power was extremely terrifying. When she broke through the final barrier, the primordial yin power that had accumulated in her body all her life was released and absorbed by Yang Kai, causing his soul to experience an extremely shocking growth. This was probably related to Yu Meng being a succubus demon, so the benefits that her primordial yin power brought to Yang Kai were not physical, but soul. His knowledge sea continued to expand, but Yang Kai did not feel any discomfort. The dreamlike murmurs kept echoing in his ears, allowing his mind to achieve an unprecedented calmness. This was a very strange state, one that made Yang Kai forget to return, and he wished he could continue like this until the end of time. However, everything had to come to an end. When his knowledge sea expanded to more than 3 times its original size, the power he obtained from Yu Meng's body was gradually digested, and the murmurs gradually subsided. Because of the soul-warming lotus, Yang Kai's soul had always been higher than his realm. When he broke through to the third-layer Emperor realm, Yang Kai felt that although his soul cultivation was slightly inferior to a half-saint's, it was still incomparable to an ordinary third-layer Emperor or high-rank Demon King. At this moment, his knowledge sea had expanded 3 times, allowing him to leave all half-saint in the dust. In this world, only the great monarchs and great monarchs were stronger than him in terms of soul power. With the rapid growth of his soul power, his perception of his surroundings had become much sharper, and he felt as if he had been reborn. Just as Yang Kai was inspecting his body with interest, a soft moan suddenly reached his ears. Only then did Yang Kai return to his senses. When he lowered his head, he saw Yu Meng looking at him with some hidden bitterness. Her face was full of shame and anger, and there were traces of moisture at the corners of her eyes. When their eyes met, Yu Meng looked away, bit her red lips, and pinched Yang Kai's waist. Yang Kai hissed and leaned over to kiss away the tears at the corners of her eyes. Yang Kai began to move gently. At this moment, the one pressing down on him was not one of the 12 demon saint, but a woman who could not bear the ravages of sex for the first time. Compared to Yang Kai, who had been on the battlefield for a long time, Yu Meng's delicate bud was not bright at all. She was truly tormented to death. He did not come out of his room for 3 days and 3 nights, which was extremely absurd. It was not until 3 days later that Yang Kai slowly opened his eyes in a room filled with decadence. Yu Meng's hair was scattered in his arms as she lay on his chest. She was like a kitten that had found the most comfortable and suitable position for herself. Her breathing was steady, and she was still in a deep sleep. This was extremely rare for a demon saint. At her level of cultivation, she could basically not sleep or rest, but 3 days and 3 nights of indulgence still made her feel exhausted. It was even more tiring than fighting an enemy who was also a demon saint. His big hand gently stroked her smooth back, and there was a soul-stirring curve between her back and her perky buttocks. Yang Kai resisted the impulse in his heart and quietly pulled one of his arms out from under Yu Meng. Dressed neatly, Yang Kai walked out of the room and came to the courtyard. There was a small bridge over flowing water in the courtyard, a rockery, and a few unknown fruit trees. At this time, it was the time for them to bloom. Small pink flowers hung on the branches, charming and lovely. Yang Kai stood under a tree with his hands behind his back, looking up at the sky, his eyes absent-mindedly. He had actually succeeded. Yu Meng did not stop him. Even after 3 days and 3 nights of absurdity, Yang Kai still could not believe that he had actually broken through the last line of defense with Yu Meng and completely occupied her. The words of Bai Li Mo and Ming Yu before made him somewhat wary of Yu Meng. This time, it could be considered as a test. If Yu Meng still refused him, then he would really have to plan carefully in the future. He never thought that the process would be so smooth. Could it be that Bai Li Mo and Ming Yu were wrong? A woman was willing to have a first time with him. This undoubtedly showed that this woman did not have any reservations about him. Otherwise, why would she joke about her virginity? In contrast, what surprised Yang Kai was that his attitude at that time was actually so tough. This was something that would never have happened in the past. Usually, as long as Yu Meng showed a little bit of resistance, he would not force her. However, 3 days ago, he had thought that he could either have her or break up with her. There was no third possibility. It seems that after becoming the demon race, his temperament has changed a little. Fortunately, the impact was not too great, otherwise, Yang Kai was afraid that he would become a different person. Kai. A light sound came, accompanied by a delicate voice that entered Yang Kai's ears. Go to hell. A sharp chi attack came from behind. Yang Kai quickly turned around and clamped his fingers in front of him. A gleaming cold sword was caught between his 2 fingers, only 3 inches away from his eyes. The owner of the sword struggled a few times but was unable to take back his weapon. Gritting his teeth, he threw the sword away and sent a palm strike towards Yang Kai. Emperor Qi surged, filling the air with a fragrant scent. Yang Kai felt that what was coming towards him was not a jade palm, but a blooming flower, a pitilessly beautiful flower that wanted to swallow him whole. Yang Kai stepped forward and rushed into his opponent's attack range, startling his opponent. Caught off guard, Yang Kai grabbed his wrist, and under the shock of his demonic chi, he instantly lost the ability to resist. Looking at the woman in front of him, Yang Kai sighed slightly. He knew that after seizing the opportunity of the great emperors, he would not have an easy time in the future, but he did not expect that the first one to jump out to make trouble for him would be Li Shiqing. At this moment, Li Shiqing's beautiful eyes were bloodshot as she glared at Yang Kai with great hatred. She, who had always been timid, was now filled with murderous intent. With her sword snatched, her wrist captured, and her emperor chi unable to circulate, Li Shiqing could not break free from Yang Kai's grip, but her other hand did not hesitate to punch Yang Kai in the chest, gritting her teeth as she shouted, "I'll kill you, I'll kill you." Yang Kai looked at her calmly, letting her punch his chest, but since she was unable to circulate his emperor chi, it was no different from scratching an itch. After a while, Yang Kai asked, "Why do you want to kill me?" Li Shiqing glared at him, "You killed the great emperors, so I want to avenge the great emperors." "How do you know I killed the great emperors?" "I saw it with my own eyes." Yang Kai lowered his eyes and said indifferently, "What you saw with your own eyes may not be the truth. What I saw was that you killed the great emperors." Li Shiqing suddenly burst into tears. Tears streamed down her face, and her murderous aura instantly disappeared. With red eyes, she asked, "Why did you kill him?" "Why?" Her punch had lost all its strength, and if someone who did not know better saw it, they would have thought they were flirting. Yang Kai was speechless. Why did he kill the great emperors? If he had known that the person he attacked was Ming Yu, he would not have been so decisive. Unfortunately, Ming Yu had already passed away, so it was useless to think about this now. Li Shiqing's reaction was normal. Anyone who saw this scene in the star boundary would want to kill him to avenge Ming Yu. Not to mention, Li Shiqing was the disciple of the great emperors, so she should have more responsibility and awareness than the average person. Yang Kai could not blame her, nor would he blame her. He only hated himself for being too weak at that time and not being able to protect Ming Yu. The abnormality quickly attracted Lao Ku and the others, and they all stared at them with wide eyes. Boya seemed to understand something and could not help but sigh. Li Shiqing was still crying when Yang Kai raised his hand and knocked her unconscious. Holding her body, he gestured to Bo Ya and ordered, "Take her down and have a look." Without a word, Boya took the unconscious Li Shiqing, carried her by the waist, and quickly disappeared. "Disperse." Yang Kai waved his hand and walked towards his room. He pushed open the door and walked in, only to see Yu Meng lying on the bed, her jade-like hands supporting her cheeks, looking lazy. She was not wearing any clothes, only a thin layer of gauze covering her body. Her beautiful body was faintly discernible, making one's blood boil. Their eyes met, and Yu Meng said with a smile, "She wanted to kill you, and you let her go just like that. What's the point of bickering with her?" Yang Kai's eyes wandered over Yu Meng's body as he spoke, then climbed up and lay down behind Yu Meng. He held her waist with one hand and used the other to rub her body. Yu Meng grabbed the mischievous hand and said with a frown, "Stop, I can't take it anymore." Yang Kai turned a deaf ear to her and blew into her ear while breaking free from her grip. He covered her plump softness and rubbed it vigorously, chuckling, "You are a demon saint, your recovery shouldn't be this bad, right? What do you want?" Yu Meng did not know whether to laugh or cry, but she also closed her eyes and leaned back. "I want to stir up trouble." After Yang Kai finished speaking, he bit her shoulder. Yu Meng immediately moaned. Chapter 3560. The atmosphere in the room was sluggish, and there was a strange smell everywhere. As the clouds and rain gradually dissipated, Yu Meng's naked body was dyed a faint crimson red as she lay on Yang Kai's broad chest like a kitten, her fine black hair scattered about as she whispered, "Smelly man, are you satisfied now?" Yang Kai stroked her round buttocks and grinned, "If I could do this every day, then I would be satisfied." Yu Meng suddenly raised her head and angrily glared at him. She punched his chest, "In your dreams. This time is an exception. Don't even think about touching me in the future. No way, right?" Yang Kai's eyes widened as his hand froze. He miserably looked into her beautiful eyes. "What do you mean?" "Nothing." Yu Meng leaned back and said with a smile, "It's not impossible for you to have me. When you become the 13th demon saint in the demon territory, I will give you whatever you want." Yang Kai sucked in a breath of cold air. How long will that take? After the transformation of the energy in his body, he was only a high-rank demon king. After that, he would become a half-saint, and then a demon saint. Although it was only 2 steps, these 2 steps were the most difficult to break through. It was even more difficult than becoming a high-rank demon king. Yu Meng said, "It will depend on your own efforts, don't be like this." Yang Kai bashfully stretched out his hands to hold her face and said seriously, "You are joking with me, right?" Yu Meng's expression was very serious as she said seriously, "I am not joking. Before we reached this step, I didn't care about you and let you do whatever you want. But now that you are my man, you have to be worthy of me. I am a demon saint, and only a demon saint is worthy of me." Yang Kai was silent. Although these words didn't sound very pleasing to the ears, they were the truth. It was unreasonable for a demon saint's man to be too weak. "Did killing Ming Yu have a big impact on you?" Yu Meng looked at Yang Kai and asked. "After all, he is one of the great emperors." Yang Kai frowned. "After all, I came from the star boundary." Yu Meng said, "Even if you didn't kill him, someone else would have killed him. From the moment he fell into the demon territory, it was impossible for him to escape. Just like how devil saints like us won't easily enter the star boundary, if we are really surrounded by those great emperors, I'm afraid we won't be able to escape death. Naturally, Yu Meng. By the way, how did you suddenly become the demon race?" Yu Meng asked curiously. Previously, in the star boundary, although Yang Kai had become the demon race once and had a demonic nature, the situation was not too serious. The power in his body was still Emperor's Qi, but when Yang Kai urged his power, what appeared was incomparably pure demon Qi, just like a real demon race. "Speaking of which, I was just about to ask you." Yang Kai frowned. "Previously, when I obtained the opportunity of the great emperors and fled, my aura fluctuated. I had no choice but to return to Cloud Shadow to break through, but when I broke through, after briefly recounting what had happened to him, Yu Meng's expression changed as she asked, "You're saying that when you were breaking through, a strange shadow sneaked into your knowledge sea?" "That's right. That black shadow was incomparably peculiar. It was practically indestructible. I didn't even know when it was lurking nearby. When I wasn't paying attention, it slipped into my sea of knowledge. After I killed that black shadow, My entire sea of knowledge was contaminated with demonic nature. Then, I was able to absorb demonic energy. The power within my body also underwent a world-shaking change. Yu Meng asked curiously, since you couldn't destroy it, how did you kill it? Yang Kai said, I once raised some soul-devouring insects in my knowledge sea. It was by relying on those soul-devouring insects that I was able to slowly kill it. Soul-devouring insects? Yu Meng whispered, extremely surprised that Yang Kai raised soul-devouring insects in his knowledge sea. What was that shadow? Yang Kai asked. It's hard to say. Yu Meng slowly shook her head, although I have some guesses, I can't verify them until I see that shadow. What are your guesses? Yu Meng poked Yang Kai's chest and said, don't ask so much, you will slowly find out in the future. Without waiting for Yang Kai to ask anything, she suddenly glared at Yang Kai and changed the topic. Your luck is really good. You obtained the opportunity of the great emperors and broke through your own bottleneck. Now, even your soul cultivation has skyrocketed, right? Yang Kai grinned. You expected this? Yu Meng snorted. Why do you think I repeatedly stopped you before? I was afraid that you couldn't bear the pressure brought by the skyrocketing soul power. This time, if it weren't for you being pitiful, you wouldn't have succeeded. Pitiful? Where did this come from? Yang Kai was a little speechless, but the benefits he obtained from Yu Meng were obvious, so he didn't bother to argue with her. He said thoughtfully, I feel that not only has my soul grown a lot, but it also seems to have gained something else. Yu Meng gently nodded and said, I am proficient in charm techniques, which is the innate divine technique of my succubus demon clan, so in the future, you will have a great resistance to similar soul secret techniques. Let me put it this way, even if those demon saint and great emperors want to use charm-type soul secret techniques to deal with you, it will be very difficult for them to succeed. Yang Kai's eyes lit up when he heard this. Is there such a good thing? Wasn't this equivalent to gaining a natural immunity? Even the great emperors and demon saint would have a hard time, let alone those half-saint. Thinking of this, Yang Kai's eyes flashed with a cold light. Some debts should be settled properly. Yu Meng said, but it is limited to charm-type soul secret techniques. It's better than nothing, Yang Kai grinned. Do you want to avenge Mingyu? Yu Meng suddenly asked, making Yang Kai's body and smile instantly stiffen. Just as he was about to speak, a small hand covered his mouth, and Yu Meng continued, I didn't mean to pry into your thoughts, but when you accepted my primordial yin, our divine senses merged, and I could more or less see into your thoughts. This let me know that you didn't come to the demon territory with me wholeheartedly. You probably came to the demon territory for Mingyu, am I right? Yang Kai's stiff body slowly relaxed. Since Yu Meng said this, there was no point in denying it, so he could only nod and say, yes, I did come to the demon territory for Master Mingyu. Yu Meng immediately gritted her teeth and said, you lied to me. While speaking, a slender jade finger had already pointed at Yang Kai's chest, and demon chi pulsed from her fingertip, and a dangerous aura instantly filled the air. Yang Kai smiled bitterly and said, do you want to kill me? Yu Meng said hatefully, you think I can't bear to kill you? Yang Kai sighed and slowly shook his head, then do it. While speaking, he closed his eyes, as if he was at Yu Meng's mercy. Yu Meng's teeth creaked, and the demon chi on her fingertip stretched out little by little, turning into a sharp aura, piercing Yang Kai's skin and flesh, and heading straight for his heart. In an instant, blood flowed from Yang Kai's chest. However, when it was only half an inch away from his heart, Yu Meng stopped. Yang Kai opened his eyes and looked at her proudly, then turned over and pressed her under his body. Ignoring the blood flowing from his chest, he laughed and said, I knew you couldn't bear to do it. Although Yu Meng was a demon saint, she was still a woman after all. She would have some strange feelings for the man who first took her. What's more, the two of them were restrained by the heart seal secret technique, so how could she really kill Yang Kai? While speaking, Yang Kai lowered his head and kissed her plump lips. But soon, he raised his head with a painful expression. His mouth was full of the smell of blood because Yu Meng had bitten him so hard that even his tongue had been cut. Is it fun to lie? Yu Meng looked at him coldly. This woman changed her face as quickly as flipping a book, making Yang Kai feel somewhat at a loss. Yang Kai covered his mouth and stammered, "But don't bite me. You asked for it." Yu Meng coldly snorted. "I said, don't even think about touching me again." "Are you serious?" Yang Kai was stunned. "Do you think I'm joking with you?" Yu Meng raised her foot and kicked Yang Kai to the side. When she got up, her clothes fluttered and covered her body. When Yang Kai came back to his senses, she was almost fully dressed. Her towering chest rose and fell violently. Obviously, she was still angry. Yu Meng squinted at Yang Kai and said, "Let me ask you, is your heart in the demon territory or in the star boundary?" This question was too sharp. Yang Kai was silent for a moment and said, "So what if my heart is in the demon territory? So what if my heart is in the star boundary?" Yu Meng said, "If your heart is in the demon territory, I will do my best to help you ascend to the throne of the 13th demon saint. If your heart is in the star boundary, I will no longer care about your life or death from now on." Yang Kai smiled bitterly. "If I said my heart is in the demon territory, would you believe me?" If Yu Meng had not seen through Yang Kai's thoughts, this promise would not be a problem, but with the divine sense from before, it was impossible for Yu Meng to believe him. Frowning, Yu Meng said, "You have completely become the demon race, and the power in your body has been transformed into demon chi. Even if you return to the star boundary, will it accept you? Why are you so stubborn?" Yang Kai slowly shook his head and said solemnly, "The power in my body doesn't mean anything. As a cultivator, I only ask my heart. As long as I have a clear conscience, why should I be afraid of heavenly thunder rolling?" Yu Meng was stunned. Yang Kai struck while the iron was hot. "Why don't you lend me a hand, Yu Meng? With your help, I will be like a tiger that has grown wings. I don't need to tell you about the situation in the demon territory. You probably know that this world is sick. The continents are gradually disappearing, and many of the world gates are unstable. One day, the demon territory will collapse. If the demon race wants to find a way out, they will have to completely occupy the star boundary." Chapter 3561. Yang Kai slowly shook his head and said, "Perhaps there is another ending." Yu Meng looked at him with a strange expression. "You aren't thinking that the creatures of the two worlds can coexist peacefully, are you?" Yang Kai laughed and shook his head. "If there weren't countless casualties, perhaps there would be such a possibility. But now, both the demon territory and the star world have suffered countless casualties. With such a deep hatred, how can they coexist peacefully? Then what is the other ending you are talking about?" Yang Kai said with burning eyes, "The dispute between the star world and the demon territory, in the final analysis, is only one word: survival. The demon territory seeks another world to survive, while the star world seeks to protect its own land. The great emperors and demon saint do not dare to act rashly because they are afraid of collapsing the world. And if the struggle between the two worlds is allowed to continue, even if the demon territory can obtain the final victory, how many people will survive in the end? Not to mention the demon race at the bottom, even demon saint like you won't have a good ending." Yu Meng looked at Yang Kai with some surprise. "You can see so far." Yang Kai said with a smile, "In any case, I have stayed in the demon territory for such a long time. If I can't even see this point, then I would have come here in vain. Even if you're right, so what? All sentient beings are searching for their own way of survival. The battle between the two worlds will never end until a victor is decided." Yang Kai looked at her and said, "What if there is a place that can accommodate all the demon race?" Yu Meng frowned and said thoughtfully, "You mean, another great world?" "Yes." Yang Kai nodded, his eyes deep. "The territory of that world will not be smaller than the current demon territory. The world laws there will also not be worse than the demon territory. Whether it is the lowest demon race or you demon saint, you will all be able to survive there. That world can be said to be a brand new demon territory. You know where that world is?" Yu Meng raised her eyebrows. Yang Kai was silent for a moment. Then he slowly shook his head and said, "I don't know yet. Maybe I will know in the future." Yu Meng looked at him for a long time and said with a smile, "What do you want to say?" Yang Kai said seriously, "If there is such a place, Yu Meng, are you willing to help me?" "How can I help you?" Convince the other demon saint to migrate all the demon race there. What a joke! Yu Meng sneered. Perhaps in the beginning, the war of the two realms started in the demon territory for the sake of survival. But now, it's hard to say how many people can still maintain their original intentions. Don't forget, the demon race is filled with bloodthirsty and warlike fellows. Yang Kai frowned. Thinking about it, it made sense. He took a step back and said, "Let's not talk about others for now. I only want to ask you, when the time comes, what will you choose?" Yu Meng was stunned. After thinking for a moment, she said softly, "If there is such a place." She suddenly flicked her sleeves and said, "We'll talk about it when the time comes." Without giving Yang Kai a chance to speak again, she said, "I'm going back to Holy City. You come with me. Before Boss Huang says anything, it's not safe for you to stay here. If you have anything to pack, pack it up quickly. I'll wait for you outside." Saying so, she walked outside. But after taking 2 steps, she frowned and showed a pained expression. She reached out and covered her lower abdomen. Then, she glared fiercely at Yang Kai. Yang Kai stood by the bed, completely naked. With his hands on his waist, he admired her enchanting back and her strange walking posture and smiled. Although Yu Meng did not make a clear statement at the last moment, Yang Kai could see that she was moved. This encouraged him greatly and made him feel that the idea he suddenly came up with was very likely to be realized. Moreover, after understanding many thoughts in his mind, she did not do anything to him. Instead, she wanted to take him to Holy City to take refuge. This showed that Yu Meng still had him in her heart. Maybe it was because of the heart seal secret technique, or maybe it was because of the pleasure of having sex, or maybe it was because of both. But no matter what, this was a good start. Yang Kai also felt his body suddenly relaxed. He did not have to act in front of her anymore, which reduced a lot of his pressure. After a short while, Yang Kai dressed up neatly. He went out to find Laro Ku and told him something. Then, he flew away with Yu Meng. He did not take his Dharmakaya with him. He left it to guard Cloud Shadow in case of accidents. Along the way, Yu Meng ignored Yang Kai, as if the joy of the previous few days did not exist at all. Probably because she was still angry, Yang Kai did not want to provoke her and simply closed his eyes to rest. This made Yu Meng grit her teeth even more. Several times, she wished she could throw Yang Kai out of the sky. A demon saint's flying speed was extremely fast. After only half a day, the two arrived at the Phantom Continent and entered the Holy City's palace. Yu Meng directly threw Yang Kai into the courtyard where he had lived before and disappeared, not giving Yang Kai a chance to speak at all. The maids in the courtyard were naturally the same as last time. Except for Xiao Wu, who was taken to Cloud Shadow by Yang Kai, the others had not changed. Naturally, they all recognized Yang Kai and served him wholeheartedly. After entering the room, Yang Kai ordered that no one was to disturb him. Only then did he sit down cross-legged, and after a slight sigh, his figure flickered and he entered the small sealed world. The next moment, he appeared in the medicine garden of the small sealed world. Mu Zhu and the wood spirits sensed his presence and immediately flew over from somewhere in the medicine garden. After seeing Yang Kai, they shouted in unison, "Master." Yang Kai looked around and said, "Where is the person I sent in a few days ago?" The two wood spirits looked at each other and Mu Zhu said, "Master, please come with me." Saying so, she led the way. Shuttling through various exotic flowers and grasses, Yang Kai, under the guidance of the two wood spirits, soon arrived in front of a spirit plant with huge leaves. This spirit plant had 3 long leaves, like 3 big beds. 2 of the leaves were stretched out while the other one was wrapped up, as if it was wrapping something. Yang Kai understood and looked sadly at the spirit leaf. Mu Zhu stretched out her hand and touched the spirit leaf. The rolled-up spirit leaf immediately unfolded and a figure appeared on the spirit leaf, looking peaceful, as if he was sleeping. Ming Yu, the Great Emperor's. The blood on the Great Emperor's body had been washed clean and they had even changed into a new set of clothes to cover the huge wound on their chest. Their face was pale and lifeless. "Didn't you try to restore his vitality?" Yang Kai asked. The Wood Spirit clan was not only proficient in cultivating exotic flowers and grasses, They were also extremely skilled in healing. When he sent Ming Yu here that day, he hoped that the two wood spirits could think of a way to bring the dead back to life and protect this mainstay of the star boundary. When Master sent him in, his soul had already dissipated, leaving behind only a shell. Nana and I were powerless, Muju replied softly. Yang Kai was speechless. Master, this master is. Muju asked softly. When Yang Kai sent Ming Yu's body here that day, she and Muene were the first to discover it and realized that this must be the work of a master. After all, this was the first time Yang Kai had sent a corpse to the medicine garden. If this person did not have an extremely special meaning to Yang Kai, how could he have been sent here? One of the 10 great emperors, the great emperors of Ming Yu. As Yang Kai spoke, he lifted his robes and respectfully knelt in front of Ming Yu's corpse, took a deep breath, and solemnly said, Master, Junior Yang Kai swears here that he will not disappoint Master and will protect the star boundary's will and the star boundary's safety. I hope that the Master's spirit in heaven will protect us. Finished speaking, Yang Kai respectfully kowtowed 3 times, and the 2 wood spirits behind him also followed suit. Although they had never interacted before, a great emperor's was enough for them to show proper respect. A moment later, after instructing the 2 wood spirits to take good care of Ming Yu's corpse, Yang Kai's figure flickered and disappeared. Not long after, Yang Kai appeared on a high mountain. At the top of this mountain, a figure stood alone. It was unknown how long this figure had been standing there, but it was indescribably bleak and desolate. As if sensing something, that figure suddenly shouted, "Who is it?" When he turned around, that person's eyes suddenly widened in surprise, as if he had seen a ray of hope in a desperate situation. He rolled and crawled in front of Yang Kai, crying, "Master, I finally see you. Master, please let me go." Yang Kai lowered his head and looked at the low-rank demon king in front of him, thought for a moment, and said, "I remember that you are called Hualun." Hualun hurriedly nodded, "Yes, this little one is indeed called Hualun." This guy was a low-rank demon king that Yang Kai captured when he returned to Cloud Shadow from the Eternal Heaven continent. It was also with this guy's help that he passed through several sealed world gates and safely returned to Cloud Shadow. However, this guy knew about the existence of the sealed world bead, so Yang Kai directly threw him into the sealed world bead just in case. On one hand, he didn't want the secret of the sealed world bead to be exposed, and on the other hand, he wanted to do an experiment. Hualun said, "Master, if you have any orders, just say the word. This little one will climb a mountain of swords or plunge into a sea of fire. This little one will not frown. I only beg Master not to imprison me here." This damned place was incomparably vast. He had been looking for a way out since he came in, but he hadn't been able to find it. What made him feel extremely horrified was that there was not a single living thing in this place. It was as if he was the only one left in the entire world. In this lonely and unfamiliar environment, this low-rank Demon King was under tremendous psychological pressure. If it weren't for the Demon King's cultivation and temperament, he would have already collapsed. Seeing Yang Kai at this time was naturally like seeing his savior. "What's wrong? Are you not used to living here?" Yang Kai asked with a smile. Hualun said with a sad face, "Master, this place is like a primitive wilderness. There is no one here. How can I get used to it?" He spoke the truth and said with a sincere expression, "As long as Master lets me out, this little one will definitely obey all of your orders in the future." Yang Kai smiled, "What can I do with a low-rank demon king?" Hualun's face turned pale. Thinking about the strength Yang Kai had shown before, a low-rank demon king really wasn't of much use to him. For a moment, his heart turned to ashes. Chapter 3562. Just as he was grieving, he heard Yang Kai ask, "Let me ask you, what is the difference between this place and the demon territory?" Since Yang Kai asked him a question, he naturally didn't dare not answer, calming his mind and replying, "The world energy here isn't abundant, and the world principles here are slightly weaker. If I stay here for too long, my cultivation will likely regress." The mysterious small world's original territory had abundant world energy and world principles, but this newly merged mysterious small world's territory was much worse. After all, these were all fragments of a continent that had disappeared. Being able to fuse back together was already a pleasant surprise, so how could he ask for more? After speaking, Huolun hesitated for a moment before asking cautiously, "Master, isn't this the demon territory?" He was a low-rank demon king. Suddenly coming from the demon territory to another world, he would more or less be aware of it. "Naturally, this is not the demon territory," Yang Kai nodded, his mouth curving into a grin. "However, it may become another demon territory." What do you mean?" Huolun was stunned. "You don't need to know what I mean. I have a very important task for you. If you can complete it well, you may be able to regain your freedom in the future." Huolun was pleasantly surprised. "Please speak, Master. This lowly one will do his best to complete it. Stay here peacefully. In the near future, there might be some unexpected changes in this world. What you need to do is to remember all the changes in your heart and then tell me. Perhaps there will be a day when you won't be willing to leave this place. Only a ghost would be reluctant to leave this place." Huolun cursed in his heart, but he still quickly agreed, wondering what kind of task this was and what kind of changes could occur in this world. While he was wondering, Yang Kai had already disappeared. Huolun was shocked and hurriedly shouted a few times, but he didn't get any response, inevitably feeling a little frustrated. However, thinking about Yang Kai's previous instructions, he could only pray that Yang Kai would keep his word and let him go one day. After a while, a treehouse appeared on the top of the mountain. Since he was going to live here, he had to have a place to stay. It was very simple for a low-rank demon king to find a place to live, so with the help of the local materials, a treehouse was quickly formed. In the side room, Yang Kai sorted out his thoughts and sat cross-legged, calming his qi and concentrating. Ming Yu was already dead and could not be revived. The only thing he could do now was to complete Ming Yu's request and protect his own destiny. If he wanted to protect himself, he would need to have a strong cultivation base. Since breaking through the shackles and advancing a few days ago, he hadn't had the time to properly experience his current state. Now that he had some rare free time, he naturally couldn't wait to see the difference between himself and before. Of course, more importantly, he wanted to check if there were any hidden dangers in his body. The sudden change in the power in his body caused him to be on tenterhooks. Especially the unsealing of the ancient devil's devil qi in his dantian, he was very worried about whether there would be any repercussions. A powerful divine sense surged out and swept through his body inch by inch, thoroughly inspecting him. After a full day, Yang Kai let out a sigh of relief. This inspection allowed him to confirm that there was nothing wrong with his breakthrough. The power in his body had been completely transformed, and his flesh and meridians were not damaged in the slightest. The vigorous and pure demonic qi was also flowing through his meridians without the slightest obstruction. Although there were no major problems with his body, Yang Kai was still somewhat distressed. His current state was impressively that of a standard high-rank demon king, which made him feel somewhat unaccustomed. He really didn't know if he would be treated as a demon race member if he returned to the star boundary. But thinking about this now was useless. Yang Kai simply threw these thoughts to the back of his mind and tried to operate his secret art. The demonic qi between heaven and earth rolled over in an instant. Along with Yang Kai's breath, it poured into his body through his millions of pores and flowed through his meridians, immersing itself in dantian. He really could cultivate without any worries in the demon territory. Yang Kai had been in the demon territory for such a long time, but he had basically not cultivated at all, mainly because the conditions did not allow it. The world here was filled with demonic qi, which was completely different from the world energy in the star boundary. Rashly absorbing it into his body could lead to unpredictable consequences. He also did not cultivate the heaven-devouring Great Emperor battle method like his embodiment, so he naturally did not dare to try it lightly. But now, after completely becoming the demon race, the environment in the demon territory was no longer a hindrance to his cultivation. Old demon qi could be absorbed, but what about demonic crystals? Without hesitation, Yang Kai took out a large number of demonic crystals from his space ring and shattered them. In an instant, the room was filled with rich demonic qi. After inhaling and exhaling, the demonic qi flowed into his body without the slightest discomfort. Immediately afterward, Yang Kai took out a myriad demon pill and after a moment of hesitation, popped it into his mouth and swallowed it. The myriad demon pill was not a pill, but a special existence formed by the nest of 10,000 demons in the demon territory. Each of these nest of 10,000 demons was constantly devouring the vitality, essence, and soul of the demon race on the various continents, allowing the nest of 10,000 demons to produce myriad demon pills. Young Kai did not know why the nest of 10,000 demons had such a strange ability, but he knew that ever since the demon territory collapsed and turned into various continents, these nest of 10,000 demons had suddenly appeared. The nest of 10,000 demons gave Young Kai an extremely strange feeling, as if they were living beings, but this did not hinder the great effect that the myriad demon pills could bring to the demon race. The myriad demon pills produced in the nest of 10,000 demons were equivalent to the crystallization of the vitality, essence, and soul of the demon race on the various continents, containing a huge amount of terrifying energy. Thanks to the myriad demon pill, the embodiment was able to advance to half-saint in an extremely short period of time. When the pill entered his stomach, Young Kai did not feel anything at first, but soon, his lower abdomen suddenly became scalding hot, as if what he had swallowed was not a myriad demon pill, but a piece of hot iron. A huge amount of energy exploded in his lower abdomen and rushed into every corner of his body, causing his flesh and blood to squirm and his meridians to swell. Young Kai was secretly shocked. Although he already knew that the energy contained in the myriad demon pill was unimaginable, only when he actually consumed it did he realize how enormous the energy was. No wonder only the Demon King level demon race had the qualifications to enjoy the myriad demon pill. If this thing was eaten by a Demon King or below, even a high-rank demon commander would immediately explode and die. He could now be considered a high-rank Demon King, and his strength was far from what a normal high-rank Demon King could compare to. A single myriad demon pill naturally could not do anything to him. Guiding the energy in his stomach to his limbs and bones, refining the energy into his body bit by bit, Young Kai could clearly feel his strength increasing bit by bit. He could not help but sigh with emotion. The myriad demon pill was much more effective than any emperor pill. No wonder the demon race had a huge advantage over the star realm in terms of the number of Demon King and above. This was not only because the population of the demon race was greater than that of the star realm, but also because of the myriad demon pill. The strength of the two realms was unbalanced from the beginning. Now that Ming Yu had died, one of the great emperors was missing, and this imbalance was even more obvious. If the struggle between the two realms was allowed to continue, the star realm would definitely be doomed. In less than 10 years, the entire star realm would fall, unless they could find a way to eliminate the demon saint population. But how could the demon saint be so easy to kill? If they could use another method to end the struggle between the two realms, it would give the star realm a chance to preserve itself. Young Kai felt that he had to speed up. He had to invade the territory of the demon race and find a way out before the demon saint left the battlefield. Young Kai spent a full 10 days to digest the myriad demon pill. It was far slower than the embodiment's speed. Because of the embodiment's physique and cultivation method, the embodiment consumed the myriad demon pill much faster than him. Now that it had become a half-saint, its speed would definitely increase. Fortunately, he had robbed nearly 10,000 myriad demon pills from Bailey Mo. After opening the door, Young Kai asked the maid and learned that Yu Meng had not looked for him recently, nor did she have any news to pass on to him. Young Kai began to cultivate again. Another myriad demon pill entered his stomach, and he refined it as usual. It was only after refining 3 myriad demon pills that Yu Meng sent him a message. The person who came to pass on the message was not an outsider, but an old acquaintance of Young Kai, Bai Zhuo. This guy had participated in the fight for opportunities in the Eternal Heaven continent, but his luck was not too good. He was injured by Ming Yu and had been recuperating in the Holy City recently. Otherwise, he would have rushed to the two-realm battlefield. When Young Kai saw him, this guy's face was still a little pale, and he coughed a few times from time to time. The two left the palace together, found a restaurant in the Holy City, and chatted while drinking. After 3 rounds of wine, Bai Zhuo smiled slightly. Brother Yang is indeed a person of great fortune. In the Battle of Eternal Heaven, more than 100 half-saint returned empty-handed, and more than a dozen half-saints even died. Only Brother Yang managed to snatch the opportunities. I am so envious. Young Kai drank the wine in his cup in one gulp, and said with a smile, "Fortune is mysterious and unpredictable, who can say for sure?" That day, I didn't want to snatch any opportunities, I just wanted to join in the fun. Baizhua said with an envious expression, that's why I said Brother Yang's luck is amazing. So many half-saints were rolling up their sleeves and glaring at him covetously, yet in the end, they were taken advantage of by someone who came to join in the fun. It was truly infuriating. Baizhua paused for a moment and said, the holy seniors asked me to tell Brother Yang that the matter has been dealt with properly, and all the holy seniors have come to an agreement. They won't make a move against you. This was within Yang Kai's expectations. Since Desolate Infinite had said that, he wouldn't slap his own face, and the other demon saint would more or less give him face. In any case, in the eyes of the demon race, he had completely become the demon race, and could be considered a part of the demon territory. There wasn't much difference between him and the other half-saints' opportunities. This was also the reason why Xueli had no choice but to retreat that day. Hearing this, Yang Kai said, in other words, I'm safe in the demon territory from now on? Baizhua smiled meaningfully, relatively speaking, it's much safer. Relatively speaking. Yang Kai's eyes narrowed slightly. He understood the meaning behind his words. Chapter 3563. Baizhua smiled and said, Saint Desolation has spoken first, so the other saint sages will naturally not make things difficult for you. However, the same can't be said for the half-saint. Yang Kai was surprised. Even the saint sages have some scruples, so how can the half-saint be so unscrupulous? Baizhua slowly shook his head and sighed. Brother Yang, you have to know that the opportunity you have was originally prepared for the half-saint in the demon territory. However, it ended up in your hands due to a freak combination of factors. If you were really a member of the demon race, then it would be fine. However, Brother Yang, you know your current situation. It's inevitable that someone will use your background to make an issue out of it and then bargain with you. Brother Baizhua, I understand what you mean. In the demon territory, the demon saint will not do anything to me due to their status and reputation. However, those half-saint won't let it go, right? Baizhua said, since ancient times, wealth has dazzled people's eyes, and opportunities can bewitch people's hearts. Moreover, this opportunity is like a path to heaven for us half-saint. If I hadn't known Brother Yang for a long time and worked under the saint sages, to be honest, I would also be tempted. Yang Kai gently nodded. Baizhua lowered his voice and said, this is also the result of the saint sages' discussion with the other saint sages. The other saint sages didn't think there was anything wrong with it. If you don't have the ability to protect your own opportunity, then it's better to hand it over early. After pausing for a moment, Baizhua said, the saint sages asked me to tell Brother Yang that since you have already obtained the opportunity, it's best for you to stay in the holy city and cultivate in peace. When the day comes that your cultivation is great, no one in the demon territory will be able to do anything to you. Yang Kai looked at him and said, is this the saint sage's words? Baizhua said seriously, not a word more, not a word less. Then, with a strange expression, he asked, Brother Yang, may I ask something that I shouldn't ask? Did you offend the Lord? She felt that the Lord's attitude towards Yang Kai was a little subtle this time. There was a hint of arrogance in his concern for Yang Kai, as if he did not want to face him directly. That's right, it was Tsunda. Baizhua would never forget that kind of expression. He had followed her for so many years, but he had never seen Yu Meng show such an expression. That was exactly the expression of a little girl who had her first awakening of love. When Baizhua saw it, he was shocked. If it was someone else, it would have been fine. However, who was Yu Meng? She was one of the 12, demon saint in the demon territory. She was an existence that stood at the pinnacle. Yang Kai smiled and did not answer. Instead, he asked, since the Lord asked you to pass the message, does that mean she doesn't want to see me? Baizhua coughed softly and said vaguely, I don't know about that. It's just that the Lord values Brother Yang very much. I understand. Yang Kai nodded slightly. Brother Yang, you mean? Baizhua looked at him inquiringly. Yang Kai grabbed the wine pot in front of him and poured it into his mouth. After a while, he slammed the wine pot on the table. He wiped the corner of his mouth and said, time is not on my side. I can't stay in the sacred city for long. Baizhua sighed again and smacked his lips. He said, "The Lord said that if Brother Yang wants to leave, he can leave at any time. There's no need to inform her." Yang Kai heard him and nodded. "That's good. Women are troublesome. It'll be troublesome if we meet." Baizhua lowered his head and looked at his shoes. He pretended that he did not hear anything. "By the way, Brother Baizhua." Yang Kai suddenly looked at him with burning eyes. "Let me ask you something. If a half-saint comes to trouble me, will I kill him?" Baizhua was shocked when he heard this. He looked up and saw Yang Kai's murderous eyes. He could not help but twitch the corner of his mouth and said, "Brother Yang, who do you want to kill?" "I'll kill whoever comes to trouble me." If it was an ordinary high-grade devil king spouting such nonsense, Baizhua would probably laugh it off. He would feel that the person who said such words didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. The difference between a devil king and a half-step saint was like the difference between an elephant and an ant. An ant wanting to bite an elephant to death was simply ridiculous. However, the person who said this was Yang Kai. Baizhua had no choice but to take him seriously. The person in front of him was not an ordinary upper-tier demon king. After thinking for a moment, Baizhua said, "No one is willing to stretch their neck out for others to chop off. If someone really wants to harm Brother Yang will naturally return blood for blood. This is Brother Yang's freedom." "That's good." Yang Kai stood up and cupped his hands. "Many thanks for Brother Baizhua's hospitality. We will meet again someday." After saying this, he walked out in large strides. After leaving the restaurant, Yang Kai turned around and looked in the direction of the temporary residence. He could faintly feel that there was someone watching him, but he could not tell who it was. Yang Kai grinned and raised his hand to wave in that direction. Then, he flew into the sky. Half an hour later, in the temporary residence, Baizhua truthfully reported his meeting with Yang Kai. Yu Meng listened calmly. Her eyebrows twitched as she said, "He left just like that. Didn't he leave any message?" Baizhua lowered his eyes and slowly shook his head. "He didn't leave any message." Then, he seemed to hear the sound of teeth grinding. He could not help but feel a chill down his spine. After considering it for a moment, Baizhua said, "Brother Yang is now in possession of a great opportunity, but his strength isn't very strong. If he leaves rashly now, it will be no different from a child carrying gold through a busy market. I'm afraid countless people will covet him. Should I chase him back?" "Why chase him?" Yu Meng's face was livid. She gritted her teeth and flicked her sleeves. "Let him die outside." Baizhua lowered his head even more as he cursed Yang Kai in his heart. "This guy just patted his ass and left, leaving me here to endure the storm of attacks from the holy senior. How disloyal." Instinctively, Baizhua felt that nothing good would come out of staying in the sacred city. He could not care less about his injuries. He cupped his fists and said, "My lord, I've been back for some time. The two-realm battlefield is without a leader. Please allow me to return to the front line and take charge of the situation." Hearing this, Yu Meng's face softened. She asked with concern, "How are your injuries?" Baizhua said, "It's nothing serious. I just need to rest for a few days and I'll recover." "Thank you for your concern." Yu Meng nodded and said, "Since you have such intentions, I'll fulfill your wish. Take this, it can help you recover." As she spoke, a jade box flew steadily in front of Baizhua. Baizhua knew that it must be a treasure that could heal his injuries. He quickly took it and thanked her. Just as he was about to leave, Yu Meng suddenly said, "When you go to the two-realm battlefield, focus on defense. Don't start a war so easily." Baizhua was stunned. He did not know why Yu Meng would give such an order. The army under the 12 Demon Saint was now divided into 12 groups. Each group had their own duties. The territories that each group conquered belonged to themselves. It was equivalent to snatching the territories of the astral world for the 12 Demon Saints in advance. When they unified the astral world in the future, the size of the territories occupied by the Demon Saints would be determined by the number of territories that were seized during wartime. Once Yu Meng gave this order, it was equivalent to giving up the advantage of snatching territories in advance. Even if she really conquered the astral world in the future, she would not have much territory. Without territory, she would not be able to settle down the people of her various continents. If she could not settle down those people, there would definitely be chaos. He was puzzled. If it were any other time, Baizhuo would definitely ask in detail. However, the sage was currently in a fit of anger, so Baizhuo did not dare to ask. He could only obediently follow the order and leave. After Baizhuo left, an extremely powerful force suddenly erupted from Yu Meng's delicate body. It swept through the entire hall, shattering all the decorations in the hall. She gritted her teeth and shouted, "Bastard!" The guards and maids in the hall were so scared that they trembled and crawled on the ground. The scenery of the flying cloud continent was beautiful. There were undulating mountains and countless spirit rivers. The energy of heaven and earth was also extremely abundant. It was one of the territories under Yu Meng. Under the rule of a half-saint, the overall strength of the entire continent was not weak. However, there was an extremely obvious difference between the customs of this continent and most other continents. That was, women were superior to men. Unless the strength of the male demon race had reached a certain level, the status of the male demon race was inferior to that of the female demon race. This was extremely obvious among the lower class of the demon race. In every village, tribe, and even city, the important positions were generally held by the female demon race. Even if they were of the same cultivation level, the male demon race was weaker than the female demon race. The reason was that the half-saint who ruled this continent was a female succubus demon. Moreover, she was from the same race as Yu Meng. Within the demon territory, each race had their own specialties and characteristics. The succubus demon race's specialty was that their divine soul was more powerful than the other demon races. The female succubus demon was a natural beauty. Within the demon territory, which demon race had a little bit of strength and status? Which family didn't raise a few female succubus demons for their entertainment? The female succubus demon's bedroom technique and ability to bewitch people were famous throughout the entire demon territory. This was something that Yang Kai had experienced with Yu Meng to his heart's content. Even if it was his first time, Yu Meng's performance in the bedroom made Yang Kai forget to return. It was almost comparable to Shanqing Luo. And this was only the beginning. If this continued, even Shanqing Luo would have to admit defeat. As the ruler of the flying cloud continent, although the half-saint Yin Sai was born as a succubus demon, because of her extremely high cultivation and status, no one had the qualifications to make her act obedient. On the contrary, she had raised 3,000 male companions in her flying cloud palace. Moreover, this number was increasing every year. New male companions would enter the flying cloud palace. Naturally, there would be old male companions who would be sent out of the palace. However, no matter what race they were from or what cultivation they had, as long as they stayed in the flying cloud palace for more than 3 years, they wouldn't be able to live for long. The succubus demon race's bedroom technique was exquisite. Taking yang to replenish yin was their specialty. Which demon race could withstand a half-saint's yang harvesting? Every year, at a certain time, the flying cloud continent would be busy for a period of time. The demon king in charge of various places would think of ways to select the most outstanding and strong demon race in his territory and send them to the flying cloud palace for Yin Sai to enjoy. Chapter 3564. The flying cloud continent was once again bustling with activity even before the selection date. Furthermore, the demand for the flying cloud palace this time was even greater than the previous years. The entire continent was in operation. Male demon race members who met the requirements were constantly sent to the flying cloud palace. Within a month, more than 1,000 people had already entered the flying cloud palace, and it wasn't over yet. Ordinary demon race members naturally didn't know the mystery behind this. They only thought that Yin Sai's master was doing this on a whim. They secretly admired Yin Sai's vigor and were endlessly envious. Even though they knew that those who were sent to the flying cloud palace didn't have many days left, being able to have sex with a half-saint, especially a half-saint who was born a succubus demon, was something that countless men wished for but couldn't get. Because of this, every time the flying cloud palace wanted people in the past, many male demon race members on the flying cloud continent who felt that they met the requirements would take the initiative to register and enter the palace. Only a few Demon King members knew the inside story. Yin Sai had always been the ruler of the Flying Cloud continent. Although she had always been the ruler, she had never been as absurd as this time. This wasn't because her master was doing this on a whim, but because she was injured and urgently needed the young demon race members to heal her injuries. In the battle on the Eternal Sky continent, more than a dozen half-saint experts had died, and the number of injured was even greater. Bai Zhuo was one of them, and so was Yin Sai. Compared to Bai Zhuo, Yin Sai's injuries were even more serious. She was almost killed by the great emperors of the Star Realm on the spot. If she hadn't escaped quickly when she saw that the situation wasn't right, perhaps the Flying Cloud continent would already be without a leader. The Flying Cloud Palace was located in the place with the densest old demon chi on the Flying Cloud continent. The entire palace was built in a grand and magnificent manner. There were countless palaces inside the palace, showing the grandeur of the ruler of a continent. Outside the main palace, a group of male demon race members were lined up in a long line. Each of them was wearing a thin robe as thin as a cicada's wings as they waited calmly. These male demon race members were selected from all over the continent. Each and every one of them had a strong body. Some were as tall and sturdy as an iron tower, some were as beautiful as phoenixes, and some were profound. Each and every one of them had an extraordinary appearance and temperament. At the front of the group, there was a female devil king with an extraordinary cultivation base who was wearing revealing clothes. She walked around the group, inspecting them one by one. Perhaps it was because she had served silver thread for a long time, but this female devil king was bold and unrestrained. While inspecting the male devil clan members, she would occasionally reach out and touch their muscular chests. She would even pull out a few handfuls of their crotches to personally evaluate the size of their assets. If they were to her liking, she would give them a charming smile. If not, she would drive them away on the spot. From time to time, some male demon race members would be dragged out of the line by the guards and thrown out of the Flying Cloud Palace. The male demon race members who passed the inspection were quickly divided into groups of 10 and led into the main palace by another female demon king. The door of the main palace was constantly opening and closing. It was as if an invisible beast was devouring delicious food. The male demon race members who entered the main palace never came out again. No one knew where they went. Occasionally, when the door of the main palace opened, some faint moaning could be heard from inside. This sound entered the ears of the male demon race members outside, causing their blood to boil and their breathing to become heavy. Not long after, the female demon king who was in charge of the inspection arrived in front of a male demon race member. She couldn't help but frown. For some reason, she felt that this guy in front of her was a little out of place. But when she looked carefully, she didn't find anything wrong with him. Instead, her eyes lit up when she saw the faintly discernible firm chest under his thin robe. Licking her red lips, the female demon king reached into the robe and gently touched it. Feeling the hardness of iron, the female demon king couldn't help but hold her breath. Swallowing her saliva, she asked, "Which race are you?" The male demon race member grinned and said, "Power demon." No wonder. The female demon king's breath was like orchids. Her voice was soft. While caressing, she said softly, "It feels so strong." As she spoke, her small hand moved down. Just as she was about to touch a vital part, a large hand suddenly grabbed her lily-white hand. A tyrannical force came from the large hand, causing her to feel a little pain. However, this didn't make her angry. Instead, it made her more interested in this power demon in front of her. Her beautiful eyes glistened and her face flushed red. "What? Can't I touch it?" The power demon leaned over and whispered in her ear, "If Master really wants to touch it, you can just bring this little one back. At that time, you can touch it however you want." His heavy breath hit the female demon king's earlobe, causing her ears to instantly turn dark red. Her entire body felt hot and uncomfortable. She lightly bit her red lips and laughed in a low voice. "You actually dared to tease me." After saying this, she hesitated for a moment and sighed softly. Pulling her hand back, she said, "Later, someone will bring you into the palace. Once you are inside, serve the master well." The demon power shrugged, his expression indifferent. The female demon king brushed past him with a regretful look on her face. She really wanted to bring such a top-grade fellow back, but she didn't have the guts to snatch anything from her master, so she could only feel sorry for him. The doors of the palace opened and closed. Almost every half an hour, 10 people would enter. The long line continued to move forward. About 6 hours later, it was the turn of the Power Demons group. Following the female demon king, they entered the palace. After the doors closed, a strange sound of impact and low growls could be heard. The sound came from the deepest part of the palace, but it was much clearer than the sound outside the door. For a moment, the male demon race in the line were breathing heavily. Following the female demon king's footsteps, they continued to go deeper. Not long after, a pink world appeared in front of them. This was a side room. There was a huge bed in the room. On the bed, naked bodies were entangled together like maggots. The air was filled with a decadent aura. Among the entangled bodies on the bed, there was only one woman. Her figure was graceful, and several other men surrounded her like stars surrounding the moon. They were very close to serving her. From time to time, a male demon race would fall to the ground, their eyes rolled back, and they would stop breathing. The male demon race would be quickly dragged out by some maids. However, the remaining male demon race didn't seem to feel anything. They still surrounded the female demon race with an infatuated expression, offering their lives to her. Even the newcomers of the demon race didn't seem to see anything. Their faces were burning, and their eyes were red as they stared at the perfect body of the female demon race. In the crowd, the demon race's lips curled into a sneer, and his eyes were filled with ridicule. As if she sensed something, the disheveled evil woman on the bed frowned. She looked up and happened to meet the power demon's eyes. In the next instant, the female demon race's expression changed. She gritted her teeth and shouted, "Yang Kai! Yin Sai!" Yang Kai, who had disguised himself as the demon race, had a cold look in his eyes. He gritted his teeth and rushed in front of Yin Sai, sending a palm towards her. Even though they were in the middle of sex, and even though they were injured, a half-saint's reaction was quick. In the blink of an eye, Yin Sai, who was kneeling on the bed like a bitch, grabbed a male demon race next to her and used him as a shield. At the same time, her posture didn't change as she suddenly retreated. The male demon race that she had grabbed to act as a meat shield was still kissing every inch of her skin. Under her charm, he was completely unaware of the crisis in front of him. Even after Yang Kai sent him into a bloody mist, he still had a smile on his face. Another male demon race that was kneeling behind Yin Sai suffered the same fate. However, his death had nothing to do with Yang Kai. Yin Sai retreated, he didn't know how to dodge and was directly smashed into a bloody mist. Not even his bones were left. Hot blood splattered all over Yin Sai's body, dyeing her snow-white body red. Only then did a terrifying burst of energy erupt. The large pink bed collapsed, and all of the male demons on the bed were killed on the spot. Audacious. In the room, the female demon king that had been serving her finally reacted. Their expressions changed greatly. They never thought that in Flying Cloud Palace, there would be someone who dared to kill Yin Sai's master. Who is this guy? The female demon kings weren't weak. 1 was high rank, 3 were mid-rank, and 2 were low-rank demon kings. In an instant, all of them pushed the demon chi in their bodies and pounced towards Yang Kai without hesitation. Die! Yang Kai waved his hands and sent out a series of pitch-black moonblades in all directions. With a series of rumbling sounds, the female demon kings who were pouncing towards him instantly felt as if they were struck by lightning. Their eyes widened in unison, and their bodies that were pouncing forward also seemed to be knocked back by a huge force. Before they could even land on the ground, their bodies had already split into pieces. Ever since he started cultivating, Yang Kai had always been good at fighting those above his realm. When he was still a second-order Emperor Realm Master, he had already killed a high-rank Demon King and a third-order Emperor Realm Master. Now that he was a third-order Emperor Realm Master, in the entire Demon Territory, only half-saint and half-saint Realm Masters could exchange blows with him. Although the female Demon Kings weren't weak, how could they get close to him? In just a single exchange, they were all wiped out. The female Demon Kings probably didn't expect Yang Kai to be so strong. Thinking that Yin Sai was here, they let their guard down and suffered such a tragic fate. On the other side, Yin Sai, who had retreated from Yang Kai's attack range and casually pulled off a thin veil to cover her body, narrowed her eyes. Only now did she realize that Yang Kai was much stronger than the last time she saw him. The death of her subordinates made her even angrier. She immediately gnashed her teeth and shouted, "You're courting death." Although she said so, she didn't immediately attack Yang Kai. Although she was a half-saint and had the ability to crush Yang Kai in terms of strength, Yin Sai still felt inexplicably uneasy. After all, the last time she saw Yang Kai in the Eternal Heaven continent, this guy had a powerful helper by his side. Therefore, as she spoke, Yin Sai spread out her divine sense, as if she was searching for something. Chapter 3565. Are you looking for Zui Feng? Yang Kai looked at her coldly. Then I'm afraid you will be disappointed. Zui Feng is not on this continent. In a sense, Yang Kai was not lying. Zui Feng was indeed not on the Flying Cloud continent, but in the small sealed world, so Yang Kai did not feel the slightest burden when he said this. Yin Sai heard this and her expression relaxed. Although she was injured, her half-saint foundation was still there. She did not detect Zui Feng's aura, nor the auras of other half-saints, so her nervous mood calmed down a little. Although Yang Kai's performance was good, she did not put him in her eyes. As long as that beast from the 100-spirit continent was not here, she was not afraid of anything. You broke through? Yin Sai frowned slightly. Even when she was asking this question, she still looked pitiful, as if she was not the one who was doing the lewd things on the pink bed. This was the terrifying part of the succubus demon. Every move, every frown, and every smile had the ability to charm people, and it was very natural, without the slightest trace of intention. Yes. Yang Kai admitted frankly. When he attacked just now, the fluctuations of power were very obvious, so it was meaningless to deny it. Yin Sai smiled. A demon king's breakthrough was not very meaningful to her. What was the difference between a mid-rank demon king and a high-rank demon king? The only thing she needed to worry about was why Yang Kai came to the Flying Cloud continent. Was there any deeper meaning to this? After pondering for a moment, Yin Sai said, "Did the Holy Senior ask you to come here?" Last time in the Eternal Heaven continent, she was bewitched by Yu Sang to set up a trap to deal with Yang Kai. At that time, she did not think much about it, mainly because she owed Yu Sang a favor. When Yu Sang asked, she really could not refuse. Moreover, Di Li was also involved. 3 half-saint subordinates under Yu Meng joined forces. Even if the Holy Senior knew about it, he would not be able to blame her. But that plan was a complete failure. Afterwards, she found out that the Holy Senior valued this human very much, so she was a little scared. However, the Holy Senior did not cause any trouble for her recently, which made her think that the matter of the Eternal Heaven had already passed. At this time, Yang Kai suddenly and brazenly came to the Feiyun continent and even unscrupulously attacked her. Yin Sai couldn't help but wonder if this was Yu Rumeng's idea. If it was really Yu Rumeng's idea, then she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to escape this calamity. This has nothing to do with you, my lord. Yang Kai snorted coldly. It's just that I'm repaying my debts. In the Eternal Heaven continent, he was jointly attacked by 3 half-saint realm experts under Yu Meng's command. Although Yu Sang had been killed by Ming Yu, Yin Sai and Di Li were still alive and kicking. If it weren't for his current situation, Yang Kai wouldn't have bothered to come and find trouble with Yin Sai at this time. He had more important things to deal with, so he didn't have time to waste here. But now that Yu Meng and the other demon saint had reached a new agreement, who knew how many half-saint realm experts were secretly watching him in the territory? If he didn't show them his strength, then he was afraid that there would be endless troubles in the future. And the Feiyun continent was the stage for him to show his strength. Yin Sai was his test target, and he could use this opportunity to settle the score of being schemed against in the Eternal Heaven. A high-rank demon king boasting shamelessly made Yin Sai angry and angry. If it was any other time, she would have already taught him a good lesson and let him know what he could and couldn't say. But this guy in front of her was a little special. Not to mention that he was valued by the Holy Master, and now he had the opportunity of becoming the great emperors. In time, he might become the 13th demon saint in the territory. Yin Sai really didn't have the guts to touch him. After muttering to herself for a while, Yin Sai smiled sweetly. Prince Yang, I think there might be a misunderstanding between us. Misunderstanding? The corner of Yang Kai's mouth curled up. Yin Sai's reaction was a little unexpected. He thought that there would be a tough battle today, but who would have thought that the other party would be scared before the battle even started, and had the intention of turning hostility into friendship. He immediately said, Yin Sai, Master, you think that the matter between us is just a misunderstanding? Of course. Yin Sai nodded. A few days ago, I was bewitched by Yu Sang and joined hands with her. But at that time, I didn't do anything to you. I just helped Yu Sang distract Zui Feng, and in the end, you came out unscathed. On the contrary, Yu Sang died at the hands of the great emperors. Speaking of which, you didn't lose anything. Moreover, you and I are now serving under the Holy Master. If we really shed all pretense of cordiality and fight here, it won't be good for the Holy Master. It will only make the other demon saint laugh at the Holy Master's incompetence. What do you think? Yang Kai rubbed his chin and said, that makes sense. Yin Sai giggled. Her voice was pleasant to the ears. Under the gauze covering her body, her swollen breasts were enough to arouse people's imagination. Any man who saw them would have the desire to climb and liberate them. This was not because she used any charm technique, but because of her own charm. In the midst of her laughter, Yin Sai said, since it's a misunderstanding, then let's talk things out. It'll save us a lot of trouble. Her tone was soft, but she was really sick of it. If it weren't for Yu Meng's face, how could she be so amiable to a high-rank demon king? As a half-saint, she had the pride of a half-saint. In her eyes, a high-rank demon king was just a tool to seek pleasure. She thought that Yang Kai's attitude would soften and he would give her face, but who knew that Yang Kai would grin and say, my Cloud Shadow mainland suffered countless casualties in that battle. Yin Sai, Master, don't tell me that you want this king to give up and retreat with just a few words. That's too insincere. Cloud Shadow had casualties, but didn't Feiyun also suffer casualties? In that battle, whether it was Cloud Shadow or Feiyun, many people from both continents died. Originally, this was not a big deal. Those who died were just some insignificant people, so Yin Sai did not really care. But since Yang Kai wanted to talk about it, then the situation was different. She was angry that Yang Kai did not know how to appreciate her kindness, but on the surface, she still smiled and said, then what do you think this king should do to show my sincerity? As she spoke, she actually glanced over at Yang Kai with a seductive look, like a dissatisfied woman in her boudoir. Yang Kai's Adam's apple moved, and he waved his hand and said, simple, as long as Master Yin Sai takes out 1,000 million demon pills, this king will not pursue the previous matter. As you said, we all work under the saint. It's not good for anyone to have a falling out, so this king will give you face. 1,000 million demon pills. Yin Sai's eyes twitched. Your Highness must be joking. It was not that she could not take out 1,000 million demon pills, but if she really did, she would have to empty her family. The million demon pills were also very useful to her, so how could she be willing to take them out? If it was 100 million demon pills, it was not impossible to negotiate. Yang Kai's face darkened. So, this king is giving you face, but Master Yin Sai is not giving me face? If you don't give me face, this king will go crazy. Yin Sai frowned. 1,000 million demon pills. That's too much. Why don't we discuss it again? There's nothing to discuss. Yang Kai waved his hand overbearingly. Either you take out 1,000 million demon pills, or this king will tear down your Feiyun continent. Your Highness, do you really have to be so aggressive? Yin Sai's face also darkened. In her opinion, she had already given Yang Kai enough face. If it was any other high-rank demon king, they would not have the qualifications to argue with her. Did they really think that they could do whatever they wanted just because they were given the title of prince by the saintess? As a half-saint, her patience was about to run out. I see that you don't have the slightest bit of sincerity. Yang Kai's eyes widened, his face filled with killing intent. Under the stimulation of his demon chi, his entire body was wrapped in pitch-black demonic chi. If that's the case, then there's nothing more to say. This king will kill you first. As he spoke, he threw a punch at the silver thread. As he punched out, demonic chi surged and condensed, transforming into a pitch-black dragon. It roared as it opened its mouth and bit at the silver thread. "Kill me." Yin Sai was so angry that she laughed. She really did not know where Yang Kai got his confidence from. She raised her hand and punched Yang Kai. With a loud bang, the whole palace was torn apart by the force of the explosion. Countless houses collapsed. Yin Sai took a step back and flew into the sky. Her eyes flashed with a trace of astonishment. This guy's strength was not something that an ordinary high-rank demon king could compare with. Although she had not recovered from her injuries, there was no demon king that could casually push her back. On the other side, Kai Yang had been sent flying several tens of feet away, tumbling through the air. Shaking his head, he said, "This little girl's strength isn't small." Before he had finished speaking, he had charged over once again. Such a huge commotion naturally alarmed the devils outside. At this moment, they all raised their heads to look, and saw that their semisage was fighting fiercely with a devil king. Their mouths were wide open, and their faces were full of astonishment. The female demon race who was in charge of checking the male demon king outside was even more shocked. She recognized the guy fighting with Yin Sai. It was the power demon that had made her feel a little amorous. But now that she looked again, that guy was not a power demon. She did not know why, but she had believed that guy's words without a doubt. Asterisk shua shua shua. Asterisk one figure after another flew into the sky. All of them had the cultivation of a demon king. They all rushed towards Yang Kai with a murderous look on their faces. "Get lost!" Yin Sai shouted, "Without this queen's order, no one is allowed to come close." As she spoke, she exchanged another blow with Yang Kai. Her figure swayed slightly, but Yang Kai was sent flying more than 100 feet. As a half-saint, she naturally had the dignity of a half-saint. Being provoked by Yang Kai so unscrupulously, Yin Sai was a little annoyed. If it was an ordinary demon king, it would be fine, but Yang Kai's identity was a little special. It made her feel a little restrained. She did not dare to let her subordinates get close. If by any chance her subordinates killed Yang Kai, she would not be able to explain it to Yu Meng. With a command, the demon kings that were rushing towards the battlefield stopped and spread out. They surrounded the battlefield so tightly that not even a drop of water could pass through. Under the gazes of all the demons, Yang Kai and Yin Sai each wore a thin silk dress. The two's bodies were extremely beautiful, but they were fighting fiercely in the sky. The scene was quite comical. Chapter 3566. It was just that the battle had been one-sided from the start. Yu Sai stood tall in the air, not moving in the slightest, while Kai Yang was like a butterfly fluttering through flowers. Every time he approached, he would launch a fierce attack, but it was all easily resolved by Yu Sai. This scene looked like an adult master toying with a child. The spectating demon kings finally relaxed. At the same time, they wondered where this guy had jumped out from. He was clearly weak, so why did he come here to humiliate himself? "Yang Kai, you are not my opponent. Why don't you just stop here?" Yin Sai's beautiful eyes were cold. She was also angry. Although Yang Kai couldn't do anything to her, being provoked by a high-rank demon king was damaging to her dignity. To her, this was simply a farce. Naturally, she couldn't wait to end this as soon as possible. This king hasn't even used his full strength yet. "How do you know I'm not your opponent?" Yang Kai angrily shouted. He pushed the demon chi in his body and charged towards Yin Sai with even more ferocity than before. "Enough!" Yin Sai angrily shouted. Facing Yang Kai's attack, she surprisingly didn't have any intention of counterattacking. She only coldly stared into Yang Kai's eyes and coldly said, "You haven't used your full strength, but did you think this queen would use her full strength?" As soon as she finished speaking, her divine sense fluctuated. Her eyes turned into bottomless pools with a strange luster flowing through them. Yang Kai's figure suddenly froze in front of her. His eyes, which were originally overflowing with killing intent, suddenly became hollow. His fist was only 3 inches away from Yin Sai's towering breasts. The wind created by the punch made Yin Sai's hair dance. Their eyes met. Yin Sai calmly said, "Don't you know what a succubus demon is best at?" Do you really think I won't dare to kill you just because you have the Saint Sovereign's protection? As she spoke, her slender finger was already pointing at young Kai's chest. A look of struggle flashed through her eyes. Standing in front of her was not just a high-rank demon king, but a great opportunity. If she killed young Kai here, that opportunity would also be transferred to her, opening a path to heaven for her. She was now a half-saint. One more step and she would be a demon saint. She was an existence standing at the peak of the demon territory. It had to be said that the temptation was too great. Originally, after the battle of eternal heaven ended, she didn't have any hope for this opportunity. She only hoped that Yu Meng wouldn't find trouble with her afterwards. Who would have thought that this opportunity would present itself to him when he was just enjoying himself in his own home? However, if she really killed young Kai here, it would be tantamount to shedding all pretense of cordiality with Yu Meng. She would have to immediately leave the Flying Cloud continent and seek protection from another demon saint. And if she stayed in another demon saint's territory, she didn't know what kind of unforeseen events would occur. If she was schemed against again, then the gains would not make up for the losses. That was why she was hesitant. Should she make a move here? But before she could think clearly, she suddenly felt her wrist tighten. She looked down in shock and saw that young Kai had grabbed her arm tightly. That terrifying strength actually caused her bones to hurt. Young Kai's originally empty eyes instantly regained their color. He grinned sinisterly. Caught you. You. Yin Sai's beautiful face turned pale. Without even thinking, she raised her other hand and fiercely slammed it toward young Kai's chest. Young Kai didn't dodge. He only urged his devil essence to protect himself. At the same time, his other fist, which was hovering in front of Yin Sai's chest, exploded with a violent power and fiercely punched out. A resplendent shockwave spread out in all directions with the two of them as the center. Among the demon kings gathered in the surroundings, a few of them who were not strong enough were shaken to the point where they almost fell headfirst. 2 mouthfuls of blood were spat out in midair. One mouthful was golden, and the other was bright red. Under the attack, both young Kai and Yin Sai felt the blood and energy in their bodies roil and their breathing become labored. The blood sprayed out drenched the two men's heads and faces, making their expressions look ferocious. In comparison, Yin Sai only felt that the full lump in front of her chest had almost been smashed by young Kai. The intense pain almost made her spasm. Her beautiful eyes trembled violently. She couldn't believe that young Kai was actually able to break free from her soul charm. The other party was only a high-rank demon king. Even if he cultivated a soul secret technique, how could he not be affected by her soul secret technique? After all, she was a half-saint and a succubus demon. At this time, how could Yin Sai not know that she had fallen into a trap? The other party's previous pestering attacks were only to numb her nerves and lure her into using her soul secret technique. He wanted her to feel that she was in control of the situation. The moment she relaxed, the other party suddenly attacked. Her arm was caught, and a huge force came over. Yin Sai couldn't break free. The man standing less than half a foot in front of her was emitting a ferocious aura like that of a wild beast. It was as if he wanted to devour her, causing her to tremble in fear. What was going on? How could the other party break free from her soul charm? Dragon form. As he shouted, a resounding dragon's roar sounded. A huge golden dragon head suddenly appeared behind young Kai. It looked down on the world and looked down on all living things. Under the gaze of the dragon, Yin Sai felt as if her life was no longer in her control. The dragon head flashed and disappeared into young Kai's body. Immediately after, Kai Yang's appearance underwent an earth-shattering transformation. Short dragon horns grew out of his forehead, and the exposed skin on his body was covered in dragon scales. His hands turned into sharp dragon claws, and a dragon tail grew out of his back. Only his body size didn't change in the slightest. With the improvement of his dragon bloodline and his mastery of the dragon transformation art, young Kai was already able to control the size of his body during his dragon form. An even more powerful force came over. Immediately after, Yin Sai felt her waist tighten, as if she had been bound by a long whip. Looking down, she discovered that it wasn't a whip that was binding her. Instead, it was young Kai's dragon tail. The dragon tail was curled up tightly around her slender waist, and the terrifying force behind it seemed as if it was going to snap her in half. Yin Sai knew that it was time for her to fight for her life. If she couldn't break free from the other party's restraint, then today's matter would be difficult to resolve. Her beautiful eyes instantly became icy cold. She raised her lily-white hand and viciously swatted it toward Yang Kai. Yang Kai grinned maliciously. He clenched his dragon claws into fists and also punched out mercilessly. The originally farcical battle had turned into a close combat of life and death in the blink of an eye. The Demon King spectating the battle couldn't accept this sudden turn of events. Boom boom boom. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a piece of flint, they had already exchanged over 100 blows with each other. The sound of bones breaking was as dense as beans being fried. Yang Kai spat out a mouthful of blood. The demon yuan covering the surface of his body was also fluctuating, as if it could collapse at any moment. His physical fitness had always been incomparably strong. At this moment, he had even activated the dragon form secret technique. With dragon scales covering his entire body as protection, logically speaking, he shouldn't be in any danger of being injured. However, Yin Sai was a half-saint. She was stronger than Yang Kai, and this was the Feiyun continent. As the ruler of this continent, Yin Sai could communicate with the continent's source strength and borrow the strength of this continent to increase her own strength. Every blow aimed at his chest was more than twice as strong as Yin Sai's normal strength. Under such fierce attacks, even Yang Kai wouldn't be able to withstand them. However, he had no choice but to do this. If he let go of Yin Sai, she would definitely disappear. Unless a demon saint personally came, it would be harder to kill a half-saint in the territory of a half-saint. Capturing Yin Sai and exchanging blows with her was the only way Yang Kai could win. From the very beginning, he had been pretending to be weak. From the very beginning, he had planned to engage in close combat with Yin Sai. Yang Kai's condition was miserable, but Yin Sai wasn't much better. Although this was her territory and she was a half-saint, in terms of physical fitness, she couldn't compare to Yang Kai. The succubus demon didn't have any advantage in this aspect. Yang Kai's cultivation as a high-rank demon king coupled with the berserk strength of his dragon form was unleashed. Every blow caused her internal organs to tremble and she spat out even more blood than Yang Kai. Another boom sounded out. Yin Sai's delicate body trembled as she felt something shatter on her body. When she lowered her head to look, she was completely shrouded in fear. Her plump chest had been crushed by Yang Kai's punch, causing blood to gush out, drenching her entire body in a warm, wet state. Yin Sai's beautiful eyes trembled. She simply couldn't accept what was happening in front of her eyes. The women of the succubus demon clan were all natural beauties. They were all very confident in their figures and faces. Now, one of their most prided weapons had been smashed. How could she accept this? Although this kind of injury wasn't impossible to recover from, the ugly scene had already been imprinted in Yin Sai's eyes. She instantly became hysterical. When she looked up, her berserk spiritual energy surged out and turned into a sharp awl. It directly rushed into Yang Kai's knowledge sea. Yin Sai gritted her teeth and roared, "Die!" The awl formed from spiritual energy was now visible to the naked eye. It was clear how terrifying Yin Sai's spiritual energy was. At this point in the battle, she no longer had any scruples. Even the opportunity on Yang Kai's body couldn't cause her heart to waver. She only wanted to kill this man in front of her. As for everything else, she would think about it after killing him. The spiritual awe suddenly rushed into Yang Kai's mind, then, what she received in response was Yang Kai's even more ferocious attacks. Each of his attacks heavily bombarded Yin Sai's wounds, causing her unbearable pain. Yin Sai was completely dumbfounded. For the first time, she revealed an expression of fear. If her previous bewitching technique had not worked on Yang Kai, it would have been understandable. Perhaps the other party was wearing some kind of treasure that was able to offset her bewitching ability, but why had her attack, which she had poured all of her spiritual energy into, failed to work? Not only did it not work, it didn't even cause the slightest ripple. Chapter 3567. Yin Sai's beautiful eyes trembled violently as her heart turned ice-cold. Her palm strike aimed at Yang Kai also weakened due to fear. On the contrary, Yang Kai was like a mad beast. The power of his fist grew stronger and stronger, causing her internal organs to tumble inside her body. The blood she spat out was mixed with fragments of her internal organs. If this continued, she would really die. She had never thought that a half-saint like her would one day be threatened by a high-rank demon king. Her strongest advantage had actually become her biggest flaw in front of this man. Her failure to use the soul secret technique twice had thoroughly consigned her to eternal damnation. Coupled with the fact that she had yet to recover from the injuries she had received in the Eternal Heaven continent, she was now at a complete disadvantage. "Why haven't you killed him yet?" Yin Sai roared as she vomited blood. Hearing her shout, the surrounding demon kings finally reacted. Their expressions shook as they pounced over one after another with their devil origin rolling. "No one can save you." Yang Kai's expression was sinister. With a thought, the mountains and rivers bell appeared and enveloped him and Yin Sai. Without waiting for the demon kings to approach, the two were completely enveloped by the mountains and rivers bell, disappearing without a trace. Pictures of mountains, rivers, flowers, birds, fishes, and beasts appeared and rotated on the bell as a world-suppressing aura filled the air. Countless ferocious attacks landed on the mountains and rivers bell, but the mountains and rivers bell was as steady as a rock. Only layers of ripples appeared on its surface. The numerous demon kings turned pale with fright as they attacked even more ferociously. For a moment, the wind and clouds changed color and the heaven and earth trembled. Fierce vibrations continuously came from within the mountains and rivers bell, mixed with resounding dragon roars and the sorrowful cries of women, playing the final dirge of life. After an unknown amount of time, when the movements within the mountains and rivers bell slowly stopped, the group of demon kings also stopped attacking. Their faces were pale as they looked at each other in dismay. With a whoosh, the mountains and rivers bell flew up, turned into a stream of light, and disappeared in a flash. It entered the chest of one of the people on the ground, revealing the two figures lying on the ground. Yin Sai and Kai Yang were still in their original position, like a pair of lovers who had committed suicide. They were tightly pressed against each other and didn't move at all. Yin Sai was even lying on Kai Yang's chest, so quiet that it was as if she was sleeping soundly. However, both of them were now badly mutilated, and there wasn't a single intact spot on their bodies. Who won? Master Yin Sai. Many demon kings secretly swallowed their saliva and carefully released their divine senses to investigate. In the next instant, the faces of all the demon kings changed drastically, because the silver thread lying on Yang Kai's chest had lost all signs of life while Yang Kai was still alive. And although he was gasping for breath, he was still alive. A multicolored light suddenly shot out from Yin Sai's body. In the blink of an eye, it rushed into the sky, and then exploded. The entire sky of the Feiyun continent seemed to be dyed with colors at this moment, and suddenly became a riot of colors. However, behind that dazzling and colorful light, there was a sadness that shrouded the entire continent. At this moment, all the demon race living on the Feiyun continent came to a realization. The master of the continent had died. Yin Sai was the master of the Feiyun continent. Naturally, she had refined the origin source of the Feiyun continent. Now that she had died, the origin source that she had refined had also broken free from its shackles and regained its freedom. The sun was shining high in the sky, but there was a downpour. Yang Kai, who was being pressed down by Yin Sai, slowly opened his eyes. The rainwater hit his face and washed away the bloodstains on his face. The bloodstains and the rainwater mixed together to form a golden-red stream. He raised his hand and pushed the corpse on top of him to the side. Then, he stood up shakily. After swaying a few times, he barely managed to stabilize himself. He covered his chest with his hand and spat out another mouthful of blood. As he breathed, a hoarse sound like a broken bellows could be heard. He turned his head and looked around. Pairs of frightened eyes were fixed on him. Every demon king who had gathered around him was at a loss. Yin Sai had actually been killed on the Feiyun continent. Moreover, it was by a high-rank demon king. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed it. What should they do now? Most of the demon kings were at a loss. Kill him, avenge Yin Sai's master. A delicate shout sounded. It was the female demon king who was in charge of inspecting outside the palace. She was probably one of Yin Sai's trusted subordinates. Otherwise, she wouldn't be thinking about avenging Yin Sai at this time. He's already an arrow at the end of its flight. He doesn't have much strength left. After saying that, she was the first to charge at Yang Kai. Her beautiful eyes were filled with a biting cold killing intent. She should have quite a bit of prestige on the Feiyun continent. Therefore, when she moved, many demon kings followed her. All of them were surging with killing intent. To be honest, she wasn't wrong. Yang Kai was indeed an arrow at the end of its flight. As a high-rank demon king, he had killed a half-saint. Even if that half-saint was injured, Yang Kai had paid a huge price in close combat. At this moment, he couldn't even use half of his usual strength. Any demon king could take his life. But he wasn't alone. Coldly looking at the demon kings pouncing at him from all directions, Yang Kai's eyes, which were almost unable to open, were filled with ridicule. When the numerous demon kings were less than 10 meters away from him, Yang Kai suddenly waved his hand. With a gallop, a guy with golden flames burning on his hooves appeared. He was exceptionally handsome and exuded the aura of a half-saint from head to toe. Wind Chaser. After escaping from the Eternal Heaven continent, Wind Chaser was placed in the sealed world bead by Yang Kai. Even when he was in a life-or-death battle with Yin Sai, Yang Kai didn't release Wind Chaser. The main reason was that he couldn't release it at the beginning. Otherwise, Yin Sai would definitely run away when he saw Wind Chaser. And during the battle, Yang Kai didn't have the time to release it. This was the best time for him to appear. The demon kings pouncing at Yang Kai didn't expect such an unforeseen event. By the time they saw Wind Chaser, it was already too late for them to retreat. The female demon king, who was the fastest, was the first to be killed. Zhu Yifeng only moved his head forward and his large head smashed into her body. That female demon king seemed to have been struck by lightning as countless bones in her body shattered. She tumbled backwards as blood and pieces of her organs sprayed out in the air. Before she even landed on the ground, she no longer had any signs of life. Immediately after, Wind Chaser ran around Yang Kai's location. Shaking his head and wagging his tail, the demon kings pouncing at him were sent flying back at an even faster speed, either dead or injured. In the blink of an eye, Yang Kai's surroundings were cleared. Excited from killing, Wind Chaser actually took the initiative to attack. His speed was extremely fast, and only a golden light could be seen flashing in the air. In the blink of an eye, he had already moved from one place to another. One by one, the demon kings screamed as they died on the spot. Even more demon kings saw that the situation wasn't good, so they turned around and ran. In just a few dozen breaths of time, the entire palace was empty. Wind Chaser probably knew that Yang Kai's current situation wasn't good, so he didn't chase too far. After driving everyone out of the palace, he turned around and moved his big head in front of Yang Kai. He opened his big mouth and snorted, looking like he had done a good job so he could praise him. Yang Kai pulled back the corners of his mouth. He wanted to laugh, but he couldn't. In the end, he could only raise his hand and pat Wind Chaser's head. Seeing this, Wind Chue slowly squatted down and used his head to push Yang Kai onto his back. Then, he took a step forward and rushed off in a certain direction. An hour later, on a barren mountain far away from the palace, under the guidance of Yang Kai, Wind Chaser stopped and descended. Yang Kai rolled down and panted heavily. With a flick of his wrist, he summoned the sealed world bead and showed it to Wind Chaser, saying in a hoarse voice, "Guard it well." After saying so, Yang Kai forcefully pushed his divine sense and flashed into the sealed world bead. When the sealed world bead landed on the ground, Wind Chaser's eyes widened as he stared at this yellow bead, his eyes full of curiosity. After observing it for a long time, Wind Chaser couldn't find anything special about this bead, so he boldly approached it, sniffed it gently, and then licked the bead with his big tongue, finding nothing unusual. Wind Chaser walked around the sealed world bead a few times before letting out a neigh and walking over to the sealed world bead. He then bent his 4 hooves and sat down, like an old hen incubating eggs, hugging the sealed world bead under his belly. Inside the sealed world bead, in the medicine garden, Yang Kai appeared, his body covered in blood, and after taking a few steps, his vision turned black and he fell to the ground. While he was unconscious, he seemed to hear the screams and cries of the little wood spirit. 3 days later, in the study of the Phantom Continent, Yu Meng sat behind a white jade desk, quietly listening to the report of a demon king in front of her. According to our investigation, after Prince Yang left the Phantom Continent, he quietly sneaked into the Flying Cloud Continent and took advantage of the fact that Yin Sai Master was summoning many male companions to sneak into the Yin Sai Master's boudoir. Then, he launched a violent attack and killed Yin Sai Master on the spot. In this battle, more than 800 people were killed or injured, including 23 demon kings. Flying Cloud Continent is now in chaos. He killed Yin Sai. Yu Meng's eyes widened. Has the news been confirmed? It has been confirmed. When Yin Sai Master died, the entire Flying Cloud Continent experienced a natural phenomenon. All the people living on the Flying Cloud Continent felt it. The Demon King lowered his head and replied. Chapter 3568. However, it had to be said that Prince Yang was really amazing. It was said that he was only a high-rank demon king, but he was actually able to kill a half-saint. It was simply unbelievable. When he first heard this news, he didn't dare to believe it. He even personally went to the Flying Cloud Continent to inquire about it. After confirming it, he returned to report it. A high-rank demon king killing a half-saint. In the entire demon territory, not to mention that no one else had done it in the future, it was absolutely unprecedented. Even the Saint Masters had never achieved such a feat. From a certain point of view, he couldn't help but admire Prince Yang's courage and strength. Just as he was on tenterhooks, he heard Yu Meng, who was behind the desk, grinding her teeth and cursing, "Little bastard! Little bastard!" Hearing this, the Demon King's expression couldn't help but become a little strange. Why does this name feel a little strange? Moreover, the Saint Master's anger doesn't seem to be as fierce as expected. It seems that the rumors I heard aren't baseless. The relationship between the Saint Master and Prince Yang seems to be really unusual. Tell me in detail, how did he kill Yin Sai? Hearing this, the Demon King immediately told her the details of the battle 3 days ago. He also personally went to the Flying Cloud Continent and found a few survivors to inquire about the situation. Therefore, he had a very detailed understanding of what happened that day. This time, it was as if he had seen it with his own eyes. There wasn't the slightest difference from what happened that day. After a while, Yu Meng's voice came from behind the desk again. There was a trace of unconcealable surprise in her tone. "You're saying that from the beginning to the end, he was fighting Yin Sai alone, and no one else intervened?" According to what this subordinate knows, this is indeed the case. After Prince Yang killed Yin Sai's master, he seemed to be an arrow at the end of its flight. When the Demon King of the Flying Cloud Continent wanted to harm him, he summoned Zui Feng to protect him. He can actually reach this level. Yu Meng's expression became complicated. However, thinking about it carefully, Yin Sai's death wasn't unjust. As a succubus demon, she was extremely confident in her soul secret technique. However, ever since Yang Kai had sex with her, his soul strength had skyrocketed to a level that even a half-saint couldn't reach. Furthermore, the charm technique of the succubus demon clan couldn't possibly work on him. It was likely that Silver Thread was also at a disadvantage because Yang Kai had taken the initiative. In addition, Yin Sai had been severely injured during the Battle of Eternal Heaven. Although more than a month had passed since then, she definitely hadn't fully recovered yet. Even though she was the master of the Flying Cloud Continent, it was hard to say how much strength she could possibly display. This was why Yang Kai was able to accomplish such a feat. If it had been a half-saint at his peak, Yang Kai definitely wouldn't have been able to achieve this with his own strength. However, this dead man actually went to find trouble with Yin Sai as soon as he left the Phantom Continent. This was really beyond her expectations. Moreover, he even killed Yin Sai in the end. If this matter were to spread out, she would definitely become the laughingstock of the other demon saint clans. Yu Meng could even imagine what kind of hateful face Bai Li Mo would show when she saw her again. How hateful. Just as she was pondering, the Demon King below cautiously asked, "How should we deal with this matter? Saint, please advise us." After all, the death of a half-saint wasn't a trivial matter. If it wasn't handled properly, it might cause the other half-saints to feel uneasy. Yin Sai had followed Yu Meng for many years. She had been killed in her own territory for no reason. There had to be an explanation. Where is that little bastard now? Yu Meng asked with a sullen expression. His whereabouts are unknown. Since Prince Yang left on Zui Feng 3 days ago, no one has seen him. Investigate. Find him for me. He must be seriously injured now. Once you find him, bring him back to the holy city. This saint will personally deal with him. Even though Yu Meng was gnashing her teeth when she said this, as if she couldn't wait to eat Yang Kai alive, the Demon King was still able to discern a different message from her words. The Holy Senior really cherished this prince, otherwise, why would she send someone to bring him back to the holy city? She only needed to send a few half-saints to kill him. Master Yin Sai probably died in vain this time. In addition, say to the outside world that Yin Sai colluded with the traitor Yu Sang and wanted to do something bad. Now that he was killed, it was his own fault. Sure enough, the Demon King responded respectfully. After hesitating for a moment, he asked, "Then, what about Master Di Li? Do we need to send someone to inform him?" He obviously knew what happened in the Eternal Heaven continent that day. Since Yang Kai went to find trouble with Yin Sai and even killed Yin Sai, he definitely wouldn't let Di Li go. Just thinking about it made his scalp tingle. Prince Yang could kill Yin Sai single-handedly, so he definitely had the power to fight against Master Di Li. Moreover, he had Zui Feng by his side. If he really went to find Di Li, it would definitely be a big mess. Di Li has already gone to the two-realm battlefield. There's no need to inform him. Yu Meng said lightly. Yes. The Demon King had a respectful look on his face. He secretly thought that the Lord had already made arrangements. Since Lord Dilly had already gone to the two-realm battlefield, Prince Yang probably wouldn't be able to find trouble with him anymore. This matter should end here. You may leave. Yu Meng waved her hand. Then, she slowly closed her eyes and relaxed her whole body on the soft chair. Yang Kai's words echoed in her mind. Even if the demon territory can win in the end and occupy the star realm, how many of you demon saint can survive the demon race? In the medicinal garden, when Yang Kai opened his eyes, he felt his whole body itch. It was as if there were millions of ants swimming in his body. The strange itch that came from his blood, flesh, meridians, and bones made him want to scratch but couldn't. It was very uncomfortable. "Master, you're awake." Mu Lu's surprised voice came from beside his feet. Yang Kai looked down and saw this little wood spirit looking at him with a face full of surprise. Her eyes were red, and there seemed to be a trace of tears on her small cheeks. She must have cried. At this moment, Mu Lu was floating beside his feet. Her hands were forming seals, and the surface of her body was blooming with a dark green light. Above her head, Mu Zhu also maintained the same posture. The green aura released by the two wood spirits was like a water tank that wrapped around him, immersing him in this kind of energy full of vitality and vitality. "How long have I been asleep?" Yang Kai asked in a hoarse voice. As soon as he spoke, he felt as if his throat was on fire, as if there was a mass of magma in his throat. Even his voice was somewhat distorted. 8 days. Mu Zhu's voice came from above his head. So long. Yang Kai was shocked. He was very clear about his own physique. He didn't need to care about ordinary injuries. Even if his muscles and bones were damaged, it would be fine as long as he recovered a little. This time, he had actually been unconscious for 8 days. It was obvious how serious his injuries were. It could be said that since his debut, he had never suffered such a serious injury. Even now, although he had woken up, the injuries in his body had still not healed. "Master, you worked too hard." Mu Lu was worried to death. Mu Zhu scolded with a serious expression. If you hadn't woken up, Mu Lu would have cried herself blind. "How?" Mu Lu's face was red as she glared at Mu Zhu, as if scolding her for spouting nonsense. When she saw Yang Kai looking at her with a smile, her face became even redder. She lowered her head and said in a voice as soft as a mosquito, "I really didn't cry." Seeing her delicate appearance, Yang Kai's heart warmed. He waved his hand and said, "You two rest." Saying so, he tried to sit up with his hands on the ground. Seeing this, Mu Zhu hurriedly flew behind him and propped him up. Mu Lu also rushed over and hugged one of Yang Kai's fingers with both hands. Her face was flushed red as she used all her strength to pull on him. As soon as the two wood spirits moved, the green aura full of vitality dissipated. Sitting up straight, Yang Kai smiled and raised a finger to rub Mu Lu's little head. He said, "It's been hard on you too." Mu Lu immediately narrowed her eyes and revealed a look of enjoyment. Mu Zhu came out from behind him. Seeing this scene, she pursed her lips and smiled. She said, "It's all thanks to Master's good physique. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to do anything. If an ordinary person suffered such injuries, they would have died even if they had 10 lives." After saying so, she put on a serious face and said, "Next time, Master can't risk his life like this." The fist-sized little person pretending to be dignified really made Yang Kai want to laugh. However, the two wood spirits' concern for him were sincere. Yang Kai hurriedly nodded and said, "It won't happen next time." Hearing this, Mu Zhu sighed. She knew that Yang Kai was just saying it casually. The outside world was extremely dangerous. There was no time when one didn't need to risk their life. If one didn't risk their life, others would. Thus, she didn't say anything else and changed the topic. "Master, you should examine your body first. You mustn't leave behind any hidden dangers." "Okay." Yang Kai nodded and sat down cross-legged. His divine sense surged as he examined his body. Beside him was the immortal tree, but at this moment, the immortal tree was completely bare. The remaining 3 leaves on the tree had been gifted to the great emperors by Yang Kai. Mu Zhu and Mu Lu flew to a branch of the immortal tree and sat side by side. Mu Lu swung her 2 little feet in the air with a very happy expression on her face. As if she sensed something, she turned her head and saw Mu Zhu looking at her with a playful smile. Mu Lu's face immediately flushed red. Lowering her head, she could feel white steam rising from her head. His injuries this time were really quite serious. Even with his powerful recovery abilities and the two wood spirits' 8 days of continuous healing, he still hadn't fully recovered. However, after a thorough examination, Yang Kai felt slightly relieved. His injuries were indeed serious, but there weren't any hidden dangers left behind. Instead, because of the battle with Yin Sai, he had gained some unexpected benefits. At the very least, his cultivation as a high-rank demon king had been completely stabilized. Chapter 3569. Sure enough, a life-and-death battle was the fastest way for a cultivator to grow. The various insights that one could gain in life-and-death situations would be imprinted into one's flesh and blood, and would never fade away from one's mind. Thinking back to the battle 8 days ago, Yang Kai was more or less relieved. Fortunately, after his spiritual energy had skyrocketed, he could nullify Yin Sai's soul secret technique and even become immune to her charm. Fortunately, Yin Sai hadn't fully recovered from her injuries that day. Even more so, he was relieved that Yin Sai had been too careless, allowing him to grasp her weakness. Otherwise, Yang Kai wouldn't have been able to kill a half-saint in her territory. As the master of the Flying Cloud continent, if she hadn't been imprisoned by him, Yin Sai would have been able to escape at any time. Even if he was proficient in the space divine technique, he wouldn't have been able to stop her. Of course, Yang Kai wasn't hot-headed and insisted on fighting her one-on-one. At that time, he had already decided that if he really couldn't do anything, he would release Wind Chaser. At that time, it would be 2 against 1, and Yin Sai wouldn't be able to do anything to him. Yang Kai gained a lot from this battle, the most direct manifestation of which was that he had a deep understanding of his current combat strength. He might be slightly inferior to a half-saint, but he wasn't like when he was a second-order Emperor Realm Master, where he couldn't even fight back against a half-saint. And if he really revealed all his cards, Yang Kai estimated that even if he really had to fight a half-saint one-on-one, he might still be able to put up a fight. Thinking back to when he met Kang Mo outside the Heavenly Wolf Valley in the eastern territory of the Star Boundary, he couldn't help but sigh. Time had changed. If he met Kang Mo again at this time, He and the embodiment would definitely be able to kill him without a burial ground. His body didn't have any hidden dangers, and with his powerful restorative abilities, those injuries that hadn't completely healed would only need to rest for a few more days. Only then did Kai Yang relax. With a flip of his hand, Yang Kai took out a space ring. This space ring was very ornate and was the one that Yin Sai wore. After Yang Kai killed Yin Sai inside the mountains and river's bell that day, he naturally did not forget to collect his spoils. With Yang Kai's current cultivation and strength, an ordinary Demon King's space ring might not be able to arouse his interest, but a half-saint space ring should have some good things inside. After a round of examination, Yang Kai beamed with joy. There were indeed some good things in Yin Sai's space ring, but what interested Yang Kai the most was naturally the myriad demon pill. There were only a little more than 1,000 pills, which wasn't a lot. It couldn't be compared to what he had robbed from Bailey Mo, but it wasn't a small amount either. There were also billions of demon crystals, some demon artifacts and secret techniques for the demon race, as well as Yin Sai's personal belongings. What made Yang Kai a little speechless was that her space ring was a little similar to Bailey Mo's. There were countless clothes of various styles, most of which used very little materials and were extremely revealing. It seemed that women were still women in the end. Whether it was a demon saint or a half-saint, there wasn't much difference in their pursuit of beauty. Yang Kai wondered if Yu Meng's space ring also had these things. After seeing the richness of Bailey Mo's space ring, Yin Sai's could only be regarded as a small matter, so although Yang Kai was very happy to be able to obtain some useful things, he didn't care too much. Yang Kai took out all the things that were useful to him, leaving the clothes and other things in the space ring. After busying himself for a while, he finished processing them. Immediately afterward, Yang Kai took out some healing spirit pills and swallowed them. While refining the medicinal effects of the spirit pills, he also took out some space spirit jades and urged his power to refine them into a space spirit bead. Being chased by the demon saint a few days ago made Yang Kai feel an urgent sense of crisis. With his current strength, if he encountered a half-saint, he could still fight, but if he encountered a demon saint, he could only suffer. Although Yu Meng had reached a new agreement with the other demon saint and no demon saint would attack him, if he had entrusted his safety to such an agreement, Yang Kai wouldn't have lived to this day. In the face of enough benefits, any agreement could be easily torn up. Being in enemy territory, Yang Kai had to consider his own safety. And now, the only thing he could rely on was the space divine technique. Teleportation was a method of escape, but compared to the space spirit bead, the distance of teleportation was undoubtedly shorter, and it was easy to be interrupted by the demon saint. The space beacon attached to the space spirit bead was more convenient and faster than teleportation, and the distance of teleportation was also less limited. Seeing Yang Kai busy himself, Mu Zhu and Mu Lu sat quietly and watched with curious expressions. New space spirit beads took shape in Yang Kai's hands, and time passed slowly. During this time, Yang Kai saw that the two wood spirits had nothing to do, so he took the initiative to chat with them. The main reason was that Yang Kai was afraid that they would be bored after being locked in the small sealed world for so long. After all, after getting them from the wood spirit patriarch, these two little ones had been living in the small sealed world all this time and had never left. Usually, only he and his embodiment could communicate with them. Mu Zhu and Mu Lu were very curious about the demon territory, so most of the following topics revolved around the demon race. Hearing about the special geographical environment in the demon territory and the fragmented continents, the two wood spirits showed surprised expressions. They also heard that there were 12 demon saint in the demon territory, all of whom were extremely powerful, causing Mu Zhu and Mu Lu to worry. A few days later, Yang Kai had refined several hundred space spirit beads. Feeling that his injuries were much better, Yang Kai finally stopped. After informing the two wood spirits, Yang Kai flashed out of the small sealed world. On the same barren mountain, Windchaser was crawling on all fours on the ground. Its large eyes were vigilantly looking all around, as if it was a guardian guarding a treasure. Anyone who dared to approach would have to suffer its thunderous fury. Yang Kai directly appeared beside him. Wind-chasing wolf turned his head and immediately stood up with a grin, rubbing his big head against Yang Kai intimately, then turned his head to the sealed world bead on the ground, indicating that he had been guarding this place all this time. No one has come here recently, right? Yang Kai asked. Wind-chasing wolf snorted. Good job. Yang Kai patted his head and put away the sealed world bead. Using his divine sense, he soon found a deserted cave on this barren mountain. Ordering Wind-chasing wolf to wait in place, Yang Kai's figure flickered and disappeared, only to return a moment later. In this short period of time, he had hidden a space spirit bead in a hidden place in the deserted cave. He wanted to connect all the continents in the demon territory with his space spirit bead, especially near the world gates. This way, it would be much more convenient for him to travel between continents in the future. If he encountered a demon saint chasing after him again, he could escape in time. If not for this, he wouldn't have made so many space spirit beads at once. Jumping onto Wind-chasing wolf's back, Yang Kai took out a map to check his position and the direction of the world gates, then pointed out a location to Wind-chasing wolf. Wind-chasing wolf immediately stepped on his golden flames and flew off. He didn't plan on finding trouble with Di Li. It had been a long time since he killed Yin Sai, so the news should have already spread throughout the demon territory. If he went to find Di Li now, he would definitely be prepared, and he might even fall into his trap. He had already achieved his original goal. Since Yu Meng had reached an agreement with the other demon saint, then after the news of him killing Yin Sai spread, many half-saint would be afraid and suppress their desire to cause trouble. It didn't matter if he went to find Di Li or not. Moreover, Di Li wasn't Yin Sai. As a succubus demon, Yin Sai's strength was greatly reduced after being restrained by him. However, if it was Di Li that day, the outcome would be unknown. What he didn't know was that Di Li had already gone to the two-realm battlefield and wasn't in the demon territory at all. The journey was a bit slow, mainly because Yang Kai had to stop from time to find a suitable place to hide his space spirit beads. After passing through one continent after another, Yang Kai left at least 3 space spirit beads in each continent. There was definitely one near the world gate, and the rest were hidden in other suitable places. These ethereal spirit pearls might be discovered and taken away by others, but it shouldn't be enough to wipe them out. As long as any one of these ethereal spirit pearls played a role at a critical moment, his plan today wouldn't be in vain. It wasn't until half a month later that Yang Kai arrived at the destination of his trip, a bone-piercingly cold and snowy place, the proud snow continent. Naturally, he didn't come to the proud snow continent with good intentions. That day, with the help of the mysterious ice, he transferred the soul brand to Bei Li Mo. Although Yang Kai took away her soul imprint as a double insurance, it wasn't impossible for a demon saint to get rid of such shackles. Although Bei Li Mo agreed readily that day, Yang Kai guessed that she must have been thinking of ways to break the brand he planted in her sea of consciousness. At that time, the difference in cultivation between the two of them wasn't small, especially in terms of soul cultivation. Yang Kai wasn't sure how long his soul brand could last under Bei Li Mo's methods. Therefore, he couldn't wait to rush over in order to strengthen the strength of the soul brand and prevent Bei Li Mo from escaping his control. Controlling a demon saint would be of great help to his future plans. It could even be said that it was the key to success or failure. How could he allow Bei Li Mo to regain her freedom? Chapter 3570. However, at the same time that Yang Kai sensed something, a stream of light suddenly shot out from Proud Snow Ice Palace's side and fled in the same direction as Yang Kai. Yang Kai didn't realize what was going on at first, but when he felt the connection getting farther and farther away from him and out of range, he suddenly flew into a rage. Damn it, this bitch wants to run. That stream of light was none other than Bei Li Mo's main body. Yang Kai estimated that at the same time that he sensed the connection, she had also noticed his aura, so she was in such a hurry to leave. This woman actually didn't want to meet him face to face. Perhaps she was already at the final juncture of breaking the connection, otherwise, she wouldn't have taken such a risk. How could Yang Kai allow such a thing to happen? Immediately urging his space force, he teleported with Zui Feng and reappeared 1,000 kilometers away, reconnecting with the broken connection. Just as Yang Kai was about to teach Bei Li Mo a lesson, who would have thought that she would suddenly accelerate and use some kind of secret technique to increase the distance between them and Yang Kai's senses? Yang Kai was furious. If he let Bei Li Mo escape now, she might really regain her freedom. Urging his space force again and again, after teleporting several times, Yang Kai finally reconnected with the connection. The moment he sensed it, he didn't hesitate to use his space force. In the distance, the stream of light that was fleeing in the same direction suddenly paused and swayed a few times in mid-air, almost falling to the ground, but it still managed to fly up again. Seeing this scene, Yang Kai grinned, thinking to himself that he wouldn't let a cooked duck fly away. While constantly controlling the soul brand, giving Bei Li Mo unbearable torture, he urged Zui Feng to increase his speed. Zui Feng's speed was naturally not slow, and after being urged by Yang Kai, it sped up even more. 2 people and 1 beast, one fleeing, one chasing, one fleeing, the ground beneath their feet flashed by in the blink of an eye. However, the distance between them was getting closer and closer. It wasn't that Bei Li Mo's flying speed was slower than Windchaser's. If Windchaser flew at full speed, he might not be able to catch up to a demon saint. Not to mention, Bei Li Mo was running for her life. The main reason was that under the torture of the brand of her soul, she was unable to escape with all her strength. The pain that came from her soul was something that even a demon saint would find difficult to endure. Affected by this, how fast could she be? Gradually, Yang Kai was able to see Bei Li Mo's silhouette, and the distance between the two of them shrank again. After another incense stick's worth of time, Yang Kai was only a few dozen kilometers away from Bei Li Mo. With such a small distance, it would only take a short while for him to catch up. "You'd better stop now, or you're dead," Yang Kai shouted fiercely, his voice shaking the surroundings. Many members of the demon race below heard this voice and looked up, only to see 2 streaks of light flashing by at an extremely fast speed, causing them to show a look of surprise, wondering who was chasing after them. If they knew that their own Saint Master was the one who was escaping, who knew how they would feel? Facing Yang Kai's threat, Bei Li Mo naturally turned a deaf ear. It would be strange if she could respond at this time. Yang Kai was so angry that he laughed and nodded. Good, good, good. It seems you won't give up until you see the coffin. Since that's the case, don't blame this king for being ruthless. As his words fell, he urged the soul brand even more fiercely. Bei Li Mo, who was fleeing in front, seemed to let out a muffled groan as sweat dripped down from her body. Even her speed had decreased by more than a notch. However, she gritted her teeth and endured the pain. As soon as she slowed down, Yang Kai immediately chased after her, riding Zui Feng and flying side by side with her, tilting his head and looking at her with a majestic look. Bei Li Mo didn't even look at him, but her eyes were full of burning flames, obviously sullen to the extreme. Suddenly, Bei Li Mo raised her hand and slammed it towards Yang Kai, her demonic chi surging wildly as the slender jade hand rapidly enlarged in front of Yang Kai's eyes, blocking out the light in front of Yang Kai. Yang Kai was startled and didn't even hesitate to give Bei Li Mo a fierce slap. The next moment, Bei Li Mo, who had been gritting her teeth all this time, suddenly screamed, her voice full of pain, her whole body trembling violently as she was unable to maintain her flying posture and plummeted to the ground. As the demonic chi in her body fluctuated, the slap towards Yang Kai also disappeared. Yang Kai was still in shock as he cursed loudly, but just as he was about to find trouble with her, he saw that Bei Li Mo had regained her footing a few hundred meters below him and was continuing to flee. So persistent. Yang Kai raised his eyes and looked ahead, seeing the light of a world gate in the distance, and immediately understood what Bei Li Mo was planning to do. He didn't chase after Bei Li Mo, instead riding Zui Feng, he continued to pressure her while rushing towards the realm gate. A moment later, Yang Kai arrived at the realm gate first and stretched out his hand to slap it. Space principles surged and the huge realm gate rippled before disappearing. At the same time, Bei Li Mo finally arrived. She watched helplessly as the realm gate disappeared without a trace. Her originally pale face was completely drained of blood. "Run, why don't you run?" Yang Kai sat on Zui Feng's back and looked down at her with a ferocious expression. "Bitch, you actually dare to attack me?" Bei Li Mo pursed her pale lips. Her clothes were drenched in sweat, revealing her beautiful figure. Her gaze was fixed on the spot where the realm gate had disappeared, her face filled with despair. She reckoned that she was probably the most aggrieved demon saint in the history of the demon territory. And today's situation was all thanks to Black Ice. Bailey Mo couldn't wait to resurrect Black Ice and kill her a few hundred times. "I'm talking to you, are you deaf?" Yang Kai roared. Bailey Mo took a deep breath, causing her full breasts to rise and fall in a soul-stirring arc. She tilted her head and looked at Chu Yang with an unconvinced expression. "Winner takes all, what do you want this senior to say? Who gave you the courage to attack me?" Yang Kai glared at her, his face filled with malice. Bailey Mo retorted sarcastically, "Who told you to be so close to me? Hey, you still dare to be stubborn?" Yang Kai was furious, and with a single thought, Bailey Mo began to wail again, her whole body curling up as beads of sweat began to fall from her forehead like rain. If not for Yang Kai's demon chi wrapping around her, she would have fallen to the ground by now. Yang Kai ruthlessly tortured her until Bailey Mo's voice became hoarse. Only then did he stop and the anger in his heart subsided a lot. Coldly looking at Bailey Mo, who was still convulsing and trembling, Yang Kai sneered, "This is the first time, and also the last time, if there is a next time." Bailey Mo immediately looked at him coldly. Yang Kai blinked and found that he really couldn't say anything ruthless. The main thing was that although he could use the soul brand to torture Bailey Mo, there was no way to control her life and death. It was really a tragedy. Scratching his chin, he said, "If there is a next time, I will take off your clothes and lead you around the proud snow continent." Bailey Mo's expression changed greatly. "You dare?" Yang Kai grinned. "You can try and see if I dare or not." Staring at each other, intense sparks flew in the air. After a while, Bailey Mo tilted her head and snorted heavily. Yang Kai didn't want to be long-winded with her and immediately shouted, "Open your knowledge, see, I want to strengthen the soul brand." Bailey Mo's face was full of resentment, but after being ruthlessly tortured by Yang Kai, she knew that it was useless to resist at this time, unless she could kill Yang Kai. But after being frightened just now, this guy has been keeping a distance from her. As long as she makes a move, he will definitely be able to react. Reluctantly opening her knowledge sea's defenses, in the next moment, Bailey Mo felt Yang Kai's divine sense pouring into her knowledge sea. A moment later, Yang Kai withdrew his divine sense. "It's done." While speaking, he rejoiced in his heart. Just now, when he was strengthening his soul brand, he found that more than half of the brand had been worn away by Bailey Mo. He was afraid that in 10 days or half a month, this brand would be completely cracked. At that time, even if he still controlled Bailey Mo's soul imprint, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to do anything to her. A wisp of soul had already been cut off by Mingyu, so it wasn't like she couldn't give up the soul imprint. This bitch should have begun to crack the soul brand after returning to Proud Snow Continent, otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to make such progress in such a short time. Fortunately, he had been worried about her and immediately rushed over after the matter in Flying Cloud Continent was over. Otherwise, she really might have regained her freedom. On the other side, after Bailey Mo checked her knowledge sea, her expression suddenly changed, and she looked at Yang Kai in amazement. "How can your soul change so much?" Although this time it was only strengthening, compared to before, the strength of the soul brand in her knowledge sea was simply incomparable. If she really wanted to crack the previous soul brand, she could have done so within a month or two, but with the current soul brand's strength, it would take at least a few years to crack it. The longer it took to crack the soul brand, the more impossible it was for her to break free from Yang Kai's control. If she could still see a glimmer of hope before, now this glimmer of hope was completely shattered. Yang Kai only needed to strengthen her soul brand every few years, and she would never be able to regain her freedom. In just over a month, how could a person's soul become so powerful? Bailey Mo was shocked. Yang Kai looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. "You found out? That's impossible." Bailey Mo looked unwilling to accept reality, biting her lip and asking, "Who the hell are you?" Yang Kai lowered his body slightly and looked at her playfully. "I am me, who else could I be?" After saying that, he swept his eyes over Bailey Mo and smiled slightly. "Why do I feel like I have the ability to control your life now? Do you want to try?" Chapter 3571. Just now, even if he pushed his soul brand to its limit, he would only be able to inflict the greatest amount of pain and torture on Bailey Mo, but at this moment, Yang Kai really felt like he could kill Bei Li Mo with a single thought. Of course, this might just be an illusion, but if he really pushed his soul brand to the limit, he would definitely be able to cause irreparable damage to Bei Li Mo. It definitely wouldn't be as simple as just now, where she only suffered a moment of pain. Bei Li Mo stared at him for a moment before suddenly bursting into laughter, rocking back and forth as she laughed so hard that tears flowed out of her eyes. Seeing her laugh, Yang Kai's expression turned cold as he asked, "What's so funny?" Bei Li Mo clutched her stomach and finally managed to stop laughing, looking at Yang Kai with interest as she asked, "You are you Meng, did it?" "She can guess that." Yang Kai was startled, thinking to himself that this person who could become the demon saint really had amazing observation skills. Just from the changes in his divine sense, she was actually able to infer such information. He really couldn't underestimate her. If this matter can make you laugh, isn't it a little too easy for you to laugh? Yang Kai coldly snorted. Really? Bei Li Mo's beautiful eyes widened. Yang Kai said proudly, "Are you Meng and I are of one heart and soul. Now that we are a match made in heaven, what is there to be surprised about?" "It's nothing, nothing." Bei Li Mo waved her hand, unable to restrain the smile on her face. "It's just that my mood suddenly became a lot better." Tilting her head, she looked at him with a look of disbelief. "That woman is really willing to spend so much on you." Yang Kai looked at her provocatively. "If you are willing, I can also take you in and call you sister with Are You Meng. Go die." Inside Proud Snow Ice Palace, under the transparent dome, on top of the soft couch that originally belonged to Bei Li Mo, Yang Kai lay unscrupulously, surrounded by a group of women. A beautiful female demon king peeled off the skin of a fruit and placed it in front of Yang Kai's mouth, making him eat it in one bite. Someone even brought a cup of fragrant wine to Yang Kai's mouth, while someone else massaged his legs and back. The most beautiful woman, the strongest wine, the best food. If one were to use 4 words to describe Yang Kai's current situation, it would be tyrannical. Bei Li Mo sat at the side and looked at him coldly. A group of female demon king servants who served Yang Kai were surprised. No one had ever dared to be so presumptuous in front of the Lord, and they had never seen the Lord so tolerant of anyone. Today, they finally witnessed it. Since returning to the Proud Snow Ice Palace, Bei Li Mo's good mood had been completely ruined. Yang Kai's actions had a great impact on her prestige, but she could not do anything about it. The door opened and a female demon king walked in. When she saw the scene in front of her, she could not help but be stunned for a moment. Feeling that Bei Li Mo's mood had dropped to the freezing point, she carefully walked over and whispered a few words in her ear. Bei Li Mo nodded slightly and waved her hand to dismiss her. "Are you ready?" Yang Kai looked up at her. Bei Li Mo gritted her teeth and said, "It's just a mere 500,000 people. How long do you need to prepare?" "Yes." Yang Kai replied and got up from the couch. He straightened his clothes and said, "Thank you for your hospitality, my lord. We will meet again." Bei Li Mo's mouth twitched and her red lips squirmed silently. No sound came out, but from the shape of her mouth, she seemed to be scolding someone. Yang Kai then said, "Oh right, my lord, you don't have to miss this king too much. I think it won't be long before this king comes to visit my lord again." After saying that, he winked at her. Bei Li Mo's face was as cold as ice. Naturally, she knew that Yang Kai's so-called visit was fake. His real purpose was to check if there were any signs of damage to her soul brand. Laughing heartily, Yang Kai strode out of the room. Outside the Proud Snow Ice Palace, the 500,000-strong army was divided into 5 groups of 10,000 people, quietly standing in the huge square. Although there were many people, there was not the slightest sound, and a kind of solemn atmosphere enveloped the whole place. Each group was equipped with 8 to 10 demon king, and among them, there were many high-rank demon kings. At the front of the group, a person stood proudly. When he saw Yang Kai appear, he immediately greeted him and cupped his fists. "Brother Yang." Yang Kai returned the greeting and smiled. "Brother Bai Ya." Bai Ya sternly said, "In the name of my lord, Bai Ya will lead 500,000 proud snow ice guards to listen to Brother Yang's orders." Yang Kai nodded slightly. "Very good." His eyes swept over the 500,000 proud snow ice guards, and his expression became serious. The Proud Snow Ice Guards were the most elite army in the entire Proud Snow continent. They were also considered as Bai Li Mo's personal guards. They were also the trump card of Bai Li Mo's army. Even in the entire Devil Domain, such an army could be counted on one's fingers. Every Proud Snow Ice Guard was selected through layers upon layers of selections. The lowest cultivation level to enter the Proud Snow Ice Guard was Devil Commander. Bai Li Mo only had 5 million soldiers under her command. If it were not for Yang Kai's order, she would not have given out 500,000 Proud Snow Ice Guards at once. Yang Kai had commanded an army before, whether it was in the astral boundary or recently in the demon territory, he had commanded at most 2 million troops. However, those guys could not be compared to the Proud Snow Ice Guards in front of him. Whether it was the overall quality or the individual strength, the ones he had commanded before were just like a ragtag army. However, the 500,000 Proud Snow Ice Guards in front of him were the ones who could really charge and break through enemy lines in blood and fire. If it was a real battlefield, these 500,000 Proud Snow Ice Guards would definitely be able to wipe out the allied forces of the Cloud Shadow continent. From now on, these 500,000 Proud Snow Ice Guards belonged to Yang Kai. Yang Kai's heart was burning with passion. Although Bai Li Mo did not say that she would give these people to him, since the 500,000 Proud Snow Ice Guards had fallen into his hands, how could he give them back so easily? Even Bai Ya. Bai Ya seemed to feel that Yang Kai was looking at her with a somewhat malicious gaze. She could not help but shiver. She asked, "Brother Yang, are you really going to continue repairing the realm gate in the Demon Saints territory? Brother Yang, now that you are in the limelight, shouldn't you hide your strength for a while before making any plans? This is really not a good time to show your face in public." Yang Kai had the opportunity of the great emperors. In the entire demon territory, the low-level demon race might not know about this, but existences above the level of Demon King would definitely have heard about it, especially those half-saint. Which one of them did not have their eyes on Yang Kai now? At this time, he really could not understand why Yang Kai wanted to expose himself and bring trouble to himself. His friendship with Yang Kai was not very good. He said this not because he wanted to help Yang Kai, but because he had been ordered by the saint to stay by Yang Kai's side and listen to his orders. He had to think of a way to protect himself. He did not want to be implicated by Yang Kai when the time came. That would not be worth the loss. Yang Kai waved his hand and said, "You must finish what you started." Although there were some misunderstandings between this king and the half-saint in the Eternal Heaven continent, since I promised someone, I must complete it. He then grinned and looked at Bai Ya and said, "Besides, there is a new agreement between the Saint Venerables now. The Saint Venerables will not attack me. If there are only a few half-saint, don't I still have brother Bai Ya on my side?" Bai Ya smiled bitterly, but didn't say anything after looking at Zui Feng, who was riding on Yang Kai. Although Zui Feng's intelligence was not high, its strength was obvious to all. If she counted herself, Yang Kai would have 2 half-saint by his side. If someone really wanted to harm Yang Kai, they would need at least 3 half-saint to have a chance of winning. However, there was only one opportunity for the great emperors. If more than 3 half-saint were to attack, how would the opportunity be distributed? No one would be willing to work for others, so this kind of situation was unlikely to happen. Moreover, Yang Kai was also proficient in the law of space. It was said that he had killed a half-saint under Saint Venerable Yu Meng called Yin Sai. His strength should not be underestimated. Thinking of this, Boya heaved a sigh of relief. "By the way, what did the Saint Venerable say to you?" Yang Kai suddenly asked in a low voice. Bai Ya said, "The Saint Venerable asked us to listen to Brother Yang's orders. We can't disobey. What if I ask you to kill a demon saint?" Yang Kai looked at him with a smile. Bai Ya said seriously, "If Brother Yang asks us to do so, the Proud Snow Ice Guard will do it." Yang Kai's eyes lit up. He nodded and said, "Very good." He waved his hand and said, "Then let's go." As he spoke, he led the way. Bai Ya called out, and the 500,000 soldiers followed in an orderly manner. They were not slow at all. On the way, Yang Kai asked Bai Ya about the structure of the Proud Snow Ice Guard. Only then did he know that the Proud Snow Ice Guard was divided into 5 ranks, army, town, battalion, guard, and team. 500,000 people formed an army, 10,000 people formed a town, 3,000 people formed a battalion, 1,000 people formed a guard, 300 people formed a brigade, 100 people formed a team, and 10 people formed a small team. The hierarchy was clear and strict. In this way, the entire proud Snow Ice Guard had 10 armies. The army that Bai Li Mo had assigned to young Kai was one of the armies. Naturally, the commander of the army was Bai Ya. The 5 strongest high-tier demon kings were in charge of the town. The battalion and guard were also led by mid-tier demon kings and low-tier demon kings. The captains were the positions of demon commanders. There were no demon commanders in the proud Snow Ice Guard. With such a clear structure and strict discipline, they could definitely unleash unimaginable destructive power on the battlefield. This gave young Kai a lot of inspiration. The star boundary was not like the demon territory. Even if the demon territory did not have a war between the two realms, there were still many conflicts on a daily basis. The clashes between the continents were often large-scale battles involving millions of people. The demon race was no stranger to this kind of war. The star boundary had been peaceful for a long time. Although there were occasional conflicts between cultivator and even sects that attacked each other, this kind of large-scale battle involving millions of people had never happened before. In terms of experience in dealing with this kind of situation, the star boundary was far inferior to the demon territory. This was also one of the reasons why the star boundary had been forced to retreat since the beginning of the war between the two realms. Large-scale battles were often not something that one or two powerful experts could control. What could be relied on was the strength of both sides involved. Chapter 3572. The demon territory was undoubtedly much more powerful than the star realm. This was also the reason why young Kai couldn't wait to find a way out for the two worlds. He wasn't thinking about the demon race, but the star realm. The star realm's chances of winning the war between the two realms were too low. Strong fortresses always crumble from the inside, and young Kai was now inside the enemy's territory. Even he didn't have much confidence that he could destroy the powerful enemy in the demon territory. He had done his best and left the rest to fate. The first destination of the 500,000 army was the Eternal Heaven continent. When young Kai first entered the Eternal Heaven continent, he also passed through Bai Li Mo's territory and entered from a neighboring continent under the Demon Saint. Therefore, the distance wasn't too far. The army's speed wasn't slow. In just 4 days, they had already arrived at the entrance to the Eternal Heaven continent. There were originally 2 entrances to the Eternal Heaven continent, but young Kai sealed one of them when he escaped. Now, there was only one left. In the end, the sealed world gate was completely destroyed by the great devil saints. This time, the army arrived at the only remaining realm gate. Bo Ya didn't know why young Kai had come to the Eternal Heaven continent. One had to know that the Eternal Heaven continent had already been shattered and disintegrated after the previous catastrophe. Even the world principles were in shambles. The demon race of the entire continent had already been sacrificed. The current Eternal Heaven continent could be said to have no value at all. The only world gate was showing signs of instability at this moment. Once this world gate disappeared, the entire Eternal Heaven continent would be completely annihilated in the territory of the demon domain. Although he was puzzled, he didn't ask anything. Bai Li Mo had asked him to command the proud Snow Ice Guards to follow young Kai. She had clearly said that he shouldn't ask anything he shouldn't ask, and that he should listen to young Kai's orders. He was a half-saint. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible for him to follow the orders of a high-rank demon king, but since the Holy Master had said so, he could only obey. After letting Bai Ya and the 500,000 army camp near the entrance, young Kai passed through the entrance alone and arrived at the Eternal Heaven continent once again. As far as the eye could see, the whole world was grey without the slightest light. The earth was broken, and the sky was full of cracks, as if there were scars that could never be healed. A trace of sadness welled up in young Kai's heart. This was the burial place of a great emperor, but when he recalled everything that happened that day, he had no choice at all. The bright moon great emperor had used his life to hand over his final instructions and responsibilities to young Kai. He didn't know how to explain it to Lan Xun when he returned to Star. Before setting off from the star boundary to the demon realm, Lan Xun had great expectations for him, but who would have thought that in the end, her father would die at his hands? Just thinking about it gave Yang Kai a headache. Sorting out his thoughts, Yang Kai wandered around the eternal heaven continent at will. The whole world was like a broken plate, and fragments of this continent could be seen everywhere. The place where Ming Yu and the holy sages had fought that day still had a mysterious aura and traces of battle. The place where the boundless blood sea used to be still had a dazzling blood-red color. Only the formation base of the 12 Citadel demonic formation had disappeared. It might have been taken back by the Devil Clan. After confirming that there was no aura of life on this continent, Yang Kai summoned the Sealed World Bead, had the Sealed World Bead transform into a rolling beast, and began to devour the fragments of this continent. Since devouring many continents in the demon territory, the rolling beast's body had grown larger and larger, swallowing an entire continent fragment with a single gulp. Inside the Sealed World Bead, on an uninhabited mountain, Hualun stood in front of his wooden house, looking up at the sky with a lonely and desolate look. Over the past few days, he had also circled around this strange world. He found that there was not a single living thing in this world other than himself. There was an invisible barrier in the sky that prevented him from flying too high. Every time he reached a certain limit, he would be stopped. This world seemed to have its own edge, and that edge was also impossible to break through. He felt like a bird trapped in a cage, except that the cage wasn't small. What the hell is this place? Hualun had asked himself this question more than once, but he could not find an answer. He remembered that before that guy left a few days ago, he had said that this world might become another demon territory in the future. Hualun did not take this seriously. In the demon territory, even the most barren continent was 1,000,000 times better than this place. There was a loud bang, and there seemed to be a thunderclap in the sky. Hualun's expression brightened and he became ecstatic, his eyes widening as he looked up at the sky. He had lived here for nearly 2 months, and the whole world had not changed at all. There were no living creatures, not even a single sound. But now, there was a sudden thunderclap in the sky, and this sudden change naturally made him feel that this world was different. No matter what this change was, it was better than living here alone. His figure flickered as he rushed up into the sky, seemingly wanting to get closer to the thunderclap to see what kind of changes had occurred in this world. There was another loud bang, one so loud that it seemed to shake the entire world. Under Hualun's nervous and excited gaze, a huge crack appeared in the sky, as if an invisible beast had opened its mouth. In front of this crack, Hualun felt as small as an ant, but this did not stop him. Instead, he became even more excited as he rushed up. Hualun felt that this might be his chance to escape. But before he could reach the crack, a colossal figure suddenly emerged from the crack, and a terrifying pressure spread out. Hualun came to an abrupt halt as he stared at the colossal figure with wide eyes. Moments later, the colossal figure finally revealed itself, and Hualun could not help but draw a sharp breath. He was shocked to discover that this colossal figure was actually a huge continent, as if someone had cut off a piece of a continent and thrown it into this world. The crack spat out the fragment of the continent, and it fell straight down. Hualun looked on with wide eyes, and just as he was worried about what kind of impact such a huge thing would have on this world, he discovered that the fragment of the continent was gradually melting as it fell, as if it was being digested by this world. In less than a dozen breaths of time, the fragment of the continent had disappeared without a trace before it hit the ground. Another fragment of the continent was spat out from the crack, and the same scene as before reappeared. Hualun couldn't help but gulp. Could it be that he was in the stomach of some ancient beast? Although he was unwilling to admit it, he couldn't help but think that way. The fragments of the continent that had been swallowed up from the huge crack seemed to be the food of that colossal beast, and this world was the stomach of that colossal beast. Otherwise, how could it have digested those fragments without a trace? One fragment after another was spat out before disappearing without a trace, as if there was no end to it. Suddenly, Hualun's brows furrowed as he keenly sensed that there seemed to be a slight change in this world. His cultivation was not very high, but he was still a low-rank demon king, so his perception of his surroundings was quite good. After pondering for a moment, Huolan's face was filled with shock. He discovered that the energy in this world was a bit denser than before, and the world principles were also a bit denser. Although the change was not too great, the feeling was unmistakable. The words of the fellow who had thrown him in came back to his ears. Perhaps one day in the future, this place will become another demon domain. At that time, he hadn't thought much of it, but now it seemed that it wasn't impossible. If this continued to develop at this rate, when the energy in this world became abundant enough and the world principles were perfected, wouldn't it become another demon territory? Huolan was shocked. At this moment, something seemed to have fallen from the sky from one of the digested continental fragments. Was there something that this world could not digest? Huolan rubbed his eyes to confirm that he was not seeing things, and his heart filled with excitement as he hurriedly flew in the direction that the object had fallen. After a full 2 hours, he finally arrived at the location and began searching through a large area with his divine sense. Without much effort, he found a spear in a clear lake. The spear was not light, and the patterns on the spear were complicated. It was obvious that it was a high-quality item that had been carefully crafted. After pouring in his essence to become the demon race, the spear actually flashed with a dazzling light. Huolan sucked in a breath of cold air. High-grade demon artifact. This was actually a high-grade demon artifact. Moreover, even among high-grade demon artifacts, it was an extremely high-quality one. He did not feel the slightest bit of obstruction when pouring in his demon essence, and was able to wield it as if it was his own arm. According to Huolan's knowledge, only high-grade demon kings and half-saints had the qualifications to use such a high-grade demon artifact. A mid-grade demon king and low-grade demon king had no chance at all. He also had demon artifacts, but they were only low-grade demon artifacts. Whether it was in terms of quality or value, they could not compare to this spear. What made him feel even more incredulous was that this high-grade demon artifact was as shiny as new, as if it had been used not long ago. But, if this demon artifact was here, then where did the high-grade demon king or half-saint that used it go? Huolan could not care less as he tightly gripped the spear in his hand and laughed loudly. The gloominess and depression he had felt during this period of time was swept away. Just this demon artifact that he had unexpectedly picked up was enough to make him happy for many days. This kind of treasure was not something he could covet in the past. Just as his good mood began to rise, another object fell from the sky and landed several dozen kilometers away. Chapter 3573. After determining the direction, Huolan hurriedly flew off to search, and a moment later, an even happier laugh rang out. This time, he had actually picked up a space ring, and the treasures and wealth stored inside were innumerable. Huolan even found nearly 1,000 myriad demon pills inside. These were myriad demon pills. Normally, he wouldn't even be able to see them, but now, he had obtained nearly 1,000 of them. Huolan almost thought he was dreaming. With so many myriad demon pills in his hands, as long as he calmly cultivated, becoming a high-rank demon king would be just around the corner. Even becoming a half-saint wouldn't be a dream, so many myriad demon pills were definitely not something a demon king could possess. According to what he knew, only a half-saint could possess so many myriad demon pills in the entire demon territory. Recalling the spear he had just picked up, Huolan realized that he had likely picked up a half-saint's relic. As soon as this thought appeared, Huolan was startled. For him, who was only a low-rank demon king, a half-saint was a lofty existence. Who could actually kill a half-saint? His shock wasn't over yet. In the next few days, Huolan constantly saw things fall from the sky, all of which were things that this world couldn't digest. Most of these things were demonic artifacts. Many of these demonic artifacts had already lost their spirituality. Their owners seemed to have experienced an extremely dangerous life and death battle before returning to the great demon god's embrace, leaving behind these demonic artifacts that had been used in battle. Huolan also picked up a lot of space rings, making him rich. However, the half-saint space ring was only the one he had picked up at the beginning. Although there were many good things in the other space rings, and even myriad demon pills were occasionally found, none of them could compare to the wealth contained in the first space ring. This situation continued for 7 or 8 days until, under Hualun's eager gaze, the crack in the sky gradually closed and nothing else was swallowed in. After waiting for a long time and confirming that there were no more treasures to pick up, Hualun turned around and flew back to his wooden house, his face full of excitement. At this time, he no longer complained that he was like a little bird in a cage. What kind of guy in a cage would have such a terrifying opportunity? The wealth he had obtained in these past few days was something he couldn't obtain even in 100 lifetimes. Hualun flew back to the mountain and was about to return to his residence when he suddenly stopped in midair and looked down. A moment later, Hualun's eyes narrowed. The mountain where his wooden house was located had actually become a lot taller. This was definitely not an illusion. Although he hadn't measured of this mountain, a demon king's perception. The mountain had grown taller, and even the ground had become heavier. The laws of heaven and earth had become denser, and the energy of heaven and earth had become more abundant. This world had already undergone some subtle changes without anyone noticing. Outside the sealed world bead, where the eternal heaven continent was located, had become a void. The entire continent had been swallowed up by the rolling stone. The huge rolling stone had transformed into the sealed world bead and was recalled by Yang Kai. Yang Kai turned around and passed through the world gate, then sealed it again and called out to Bai Ya, who was waiting outside, "Let's go." He didn't expect that there would be so many good things left behind from the battle of the eternal heaven continent. Ming Yu had killed more than a dozen half-saint realm cultivators in the eternal heaven continent, so the remains of these half-saint realm cultivators were naturally left behind. Most of them were found and taken away after the battle, but there was still one space ring that was completely lost. Now, it was Hualun, who was imprisoned in the sealed world bead. After leaving the eternal heaven continent, Yang Kai took Bai Ya and the 500,000 proud snow ice guards to various continents in the demon territory. Nominally, they were repairing and maintaining the world gates in the demon territory. This was something that Yang Kai hadn't finished before. More than half a year ago, when he was carrying out this task, he was ambushed and taken away by 3 half-saint realm cultivators from the 100-spirit continent. Then, the eternal heaven change broke out, so this matter was delayed. If he continued at this time, no one would question him. However, repairing and maintaining the world gates was just an excuse. His real goal was to find an opportunity to devour the missing continents. In the past, when he asked Rolling to devour those continents, Yang Kai didn't think too much about it. He just felt that it was a waste to just let the fragments of those continents be lost in the void. In any case, Rolling had already devoured them before, so it wasn't a bad thing to expand the sealed world bead's territory. But now, it seemed that this was a wise move with foresight. Those broken continents contained a part of the world principles of the demon territory. Although these world principles were as broken as the continents themselves, Rolling didn't refuse any of them. Many a little makes an ocean, and a quantitative change would lead to a qualitative change. The sealed world bead might undergo earth-shattering changes in the future. If this idea was really feasible, then he might be able to lead the war between the two realms to another path. As a veteran half-saint in the demon territory, Bai Ya naturally knew the situation in the entire demon territory like the back of his hand. Now that he had him by his side as an advisor, many things would be a lot easier to handle. Yang Kai only chatted with him for a few days, but he had already planned an efficient route in his mind. They passed through one continent after another. Every once in a while, Yang Kai would stop and have the proud snow ice guards seal off an area while he disappeared for a few days. Bai Ya also gradually discovered something strange about Yang Kai. This was because along the way, Yang Kai didn't repair or maintain any world gates at all. Instead, it was as if he was leading an army of 500,000 on a sightseeing tour, shuttling back and forth between continents in the demon territory. And every time he stopped at a place, there seemed to be some special rules. It wasn't until 2 months later that Bai Ya finally discovered what these rules were. The places that the proud snow ice guards sealed off were definitely places where a world gate once existed, and that world gate was connected to a continent that had disappeared when it still existed. After discovering this rule, Bai Ya's heart couldn't help but skip a beat. As a half-saint, his mind was naturally extremely sharp. An unbelievable guess couldn't help but appear in his mind. And as he secretly observed in private, he finally confirmed the guess in his heart one day. Yonkai really could reopen the world gates of those disappeared continents and then enter those continents. Bai Ya's heart was in a perilous situation. Why did the demon race start the war between the two realms at all costs? Firstly, the demon race was bloodthirsty and aggressive. Secondly, it was because the demon race needed to find a place to settle down. The entire demon territory used to be a single entity many years ago, but for some reason, it later split into countless continents of various sizes. If that was all, it wouldn't be a big deal. The continents were split, but they could still be connected to each other. The lives of millions of demon race didn't change much. The most important thing was that the continents were gradually disappearing, and the world gates that still existed were slowly having problems. If the demon race didn't need to find a place to settle down, once all the world gates disappeared, the continents would completely lose contact with each other, and the entire demon territory would fall apart. By that time, perhaps even the demon saint wouldn't be able to predict what would happen, and it might be the end of the demon territory. However, now that Yonkai had found the missing continents and was able to enter them, plus he had the means to repair the world gates, it was enough for him to maintain the safety of the demon territory for the rest of his life, and prevent the demon territory from being destroyed. If that was the case, then what was the point of the war between the two realms? Countless demon race warriors and even the demon king and half-saint, what was the point of sacrificing their lives in the astral world? No wonder Yonkai asked the Saint Senior for 500,000 proud snow ice guards to accompany him. This kind of thing really required some help. Without the proud snow ice guards' blockade, if someone accidentally broke through, news would quickly spread, causing the entire demon territory to become turbulent. Since discovering Yonkai's secret, Bai Ya had become a little absent-minded, looking at Yonkai as if she was looking at a monster. Since he didn't expose him, Yonkai didn't explain either. Since he had brought Bai Ya along, Yonkai didn't think that this secret could be kept a secret for long. In any case, one day in the future, this matter would definitely be revealed, so letting Bai Ya inform Bai Limo first was a good way to test her attitude. Inside the small sealed world, the mountain where Hualun built his wooden house grew taller and taller. Since witnessing that magical scene with his own eyes that day, similar scenes would appear every once in a while. When a huge crack appeared in the sky for the second time and another fragment of the continent was swallowed up, Hualun rushed out excitedly, wanting to pick up some more treasures. But the result this time disappointed him. Even after the crack closed, nothing strange fell from the sky. The same happened a third time, a fourth time. Today, Hualun didn't have any extravagant hopes. When the crack in the sky appeared again, he just opened his eyes and glanced at it indifferently. No matter how shocking the scene was, it didn't matter anymore. In any case, there was nothing to pick up, so the crack would close on its own in a few days. These days, Hualun went out again, mainly to verify a guess in his heart, and it turned out that his guess was correct. This world was expanding, and not only was the mountain he was on growing taller, but the entire world had also become much larger. As the crack opened again and again, as more and more fragments of the continent were swallowed up, the world principles and world energy of this world gradually increased. World creation. Hualun suddenly understood. This kind of earth-shattering method was almost equivalent to the world creation stage. Who could have such an earth-shattering method? Was it the man who brought me here? Hualun couldn't help thinking of Yonkai. That day, he had told that man that if one lived in this place for too long, not only would their cultivation not be able to improve, there was even a risk of it falling. But today, this kind of risk no longer existed. Perhaps in the absence of cultivation resources, it would be difficult to improve one's cultivation, but it was impossible for one's cultivation to drop. This was because the energy and laws of this world had undergone great changes. Chapter 3574. Yonkai led the proud snow ice guards and roamed around the various continents of the demon territory for an entire year. During this year, he went to every demon saint's territory and devoured all the known continents that had disappeared. One day, a year later, Bai Ya stood in front of a void corridor in the sky above a vast sea. His eyes were absent-minded as he stared at the pitch-black void corridor filled with a dangerous aura. He had a complicated expression on his face. He knew that the void corridor connected to a continent that had disappeared from the demon territory as early as 3,000 years ago. After such a long time, Yang Kai no longer hid anything from him. In any case, this guy had already pried into his secrets. Secrets that were pried into were no longer secrets. Therefore, more than half a year ago, Yang Kai openly released the Return to Ruins in front of him and used the power of the Return to Ruins to shatter the void corridor. Yang Kai even brought him inside. When he saw the shattered continent, Bai Ya's expression was very interesting. He was filled with disbelief. Over the years, at least 100 continents had disappeared from the demon territory. However, all the people of the demon race subconsciously thought that these missing continents were only disconnected from the demon territory. There shouldn't be any problems with the continents themselves. As long as they could find that connection, those missing continents would return one day. However, when Bai Ya saw the outcome of those missing continents with his own eyes, he realized that he had been taking things for granted all this time. Even if the demon territory was fragmented, it was still a whole. Once a continent was separated from the demon territory as a whole, it would be like a person's limb being cut off. It would gradually decay and shatter due to the loss of nutrients. There was great fear between life and death. After seeing the outcome of those missing continents with his own eyes, Bai Ya couldn't help but wonder if the surviving continents in the demon territory would one day end up like that. The continents would shatter and the holy spirits on those continents would all die. At that time, even the demon saint might not be able to escape, let alone a half-saint like himself. A faint aura came from the void corridor in front of him. Then, a figure flashed and Yang Kai appeared. Their eyes met and Yang Kai nodded slightly. "Thank you for your hard work, brother Bai Ya." Bai Ya smiled bitterly and shook her head. "Compared to what Brother Yang is doing, I'm just keeping a lookout. What's so hard about it? Is everything okay outside?" Yang Kai looked around. "There's a probing aura, but it hasn't come close." Bai Ya replied. With his status as a half-saint, only a half-saint's aura could make him care about probing. Over the past year, it hadn't been smooth sailing. Yu Meng had reached a new agreement with the other demon saint a year ago. The demon saint wouldn't attack Yang Kai anymore, but there were many half-saints who heard the news. Yang Kai was now like a big injured fish in the ocean. His entire body reeked of blood, attracting the covetous gazes of those sharks and half-saints. Over the past year, he had clashed with half-saint more than 10 times. However, Yang Kai now had Windchaser, 500,000 proud snow ice guards, and Bai Ya by his side. 1 or 2 half-saints attacks were useless. The most dangerous time was when he encountered 5 half-saints attacks. In that battle, Bai Ya and Windchaser were each entangled by a half-saint and couldn't get away. The remaining 3 half-saints' relentless pursuit of Yang Kai made them think that they were about to succeed. However, every time Yang Kai went to a continent, he would hide his space spirit bead. Coupled with his incomparably exquisite space divine technique, even if he couldn't defeat them, he could still run away. That battle lasted for half a month. In the end, those 3 half-saints followed behind Yang Kai and ate his dust for half a month. They didn't even get a single strand of hair. Instead, they were tormented by Yang Kai's unpredictable methods. Since then, no half-saint had a direct confrontation with Yang Kai. Now, all the half-saints in the demon territory knew that unless 10 half-saints joined hands or instantly sealed the area around Yang Kai, he wouldn't be able to escape. Otherwise, there was no way to deal with someone who was proficient in space law. However, it was extremely difficult for 10 half-saints to join hands. The demon territory didn't lack these 10 half-saints. Back then, more than 100 half-saints participated in the encirclement of the Bright Moon Great Emperors, but at that time, it was only because of the orders of the demon saint that they joined hands. Now, it was basically impossible for 10 half-saints to join hands to kill an enemy, especially when the enemy only had a single opportunity. Yang Kai's battle had shocked the world. Previously, he had become famous in the demon territory because he obtained the opportunity of the great emperors. Only now did those half-saints, who were familiar with him or not, realize that this guy's strength was also unfathomable. It was no wonder that he could escape from the demon saint's pursuit that day. Are there no other continents? Yang Kai asked. Bai Ya shook her head. The demon blood continent is the last continent that disappeared. Yang Kai frowned when he heard this. He immersed his consciousness into the small sealed world and sighed slightly. It's still not enough. Although the small sealed world had undergone tremendous changes over the past year because it had swallowed the broken continents and its territory had become infinitely vast, it still wasn't enough. It wasn't that its territory was too small. The current territory of the small sealed world was equivalent to the sum of nearly 100 continents in the demon territory. With such a huge territory, it was absolutely possible to accommodate hundreds of billions of people. The shortcomings of the small sealed world lay in its world principles and world energy. Now, the world principles in the expanded territory of the small sealed world were similar to those in the star territory. In other words, under such world principles, the strongest master that could be born was only an origin king. Hualun was the best test subject. He had the cultivation of a low-rank demon king, and during this time, he seemed to have been using the myriad demon pill to improve his cultivation. Now, he had reached the peak of the low-rank demon king realm, but he was unable to break through his bottleneck. The reason for this was that the world principles in the small sealed world were unable to meet his requirements for a breakthrough. If the newly expanded territory of the small sealed world didn't change, Hualun would never be able to break through his bottleneck. This was the limit of the world principles, just like the origin kings in the star territory who needed to find a way to enter the star boundary. If one couldn't break through the limits of the world principles, no matter how good one's aptitude was, it would be impossible for them to make any further progress. It seems that I can only take this risk. Yang Kai only hesitated for a moment before a resolute light flashed across his eyes, hoping that Bai Li Mo wouldn't fall out with him. Let's go. Yang Kai called out to Bai Ya. Bai Ya immediately ordered the proud snow ice guards who were standing guard around to gather around. After the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, the army flew into the sky. Half a month later, outside a world gate, Bai Ya stopped, the corners of his mouth twitching as he said, "Brother Yang, if I remember correctly, this world gate should lead to the 100 Spirit Continent. Is our destination the 100 Spirit Continent?" "That's right." Yang Kai looked at him with a smile, grabbed his arm without any explanation, and stepped forward with him. Bai Ya was shocked, but before he could say anything, the two had already plunged into the world gate and arrived in a gorgeous and colorful world. Bai Ya smiled bitterly. The 100 Spirit Continent had a special status in the entire demon territory. Except for those who were blinded by greed, who dared to enter it. Especially the half-saint subordinates of the demon saint. They had all been warned by the demon saint to never enter the 100 Spirit Continent, otherwise, they would be asking for it even if they died. Although Bai Ya knew that Yang Kai had a good relationship with the 100 Spirit Continent, he still felt like he had entered a tiger's den when he was dragged here. But since he was already here, what else could he say? He could only pray that the owner of the 100 Spirit Continent would not blame him. Who is trespassing on the 100 Spirit Continent? As soon as the two of them stood firm, a loud shout came from the other side. Obviously, someone had noticed the abnormality here. While the voice was speaking, a beam of light came quickly. When it came closer, the figure in the beam of light was revealed. It was a middle-aged man with the aura of a half-saint. After seeing Yang Kai, the man could not help but be stunned. He immediately clasped his hands and said, "It's Lord Yang, Master." Bai Ya could not help but frown when she heard this name. She was not familiar with the middle-aged man in front of her. The half-saint of the 100 Spirit Continent rarely interacted with the outside world, but the half-saint here were all holy spirits and were extremely arrogant. How could such a person call Yang Kai master? Bai Ya realized that she seemed to have underestimated Yang Kai's status in the 100 Spirit Continent and how much the owner of the 100 Spirit Continent valued her. No wonder even wind-chasing Wolf was always by his side. This guy was the mount of that person who galloped the world. How should I address you? Yang Kai looked at the middle-aged man with a smile. The middle-aged man clasped his hands and said, "Master, You can just call me, do you? Yang Kai nodded slightly. Is Senior Changtian here? I want to see Senior. Master, please come with me. Du Yu gestured with his hand and glanced at Bai Ya as he spoke. A fierce light flashed in his eyes, and the fierce aura made Bai Ya's hair stand on end. Yang Kai said, Brother Bai Ya is my companion. When Du Yu heard this, the fierce light in his eyes gradually disappeared. He nodded slightly and led the way without saying a word. In the dark and cold hall that seemed to never see the light of day, Yang Kai saw Changtian again. A person like him could not have changed much in such a short time, so the two of them sat on the ground in the hall. Outside the hall, Bai Ya stood quietly with a serious expression. Du Yu, who led the way, was nowhere to be seen, but there was a pair of twin sisters standing in front of him, staring at him without blinking. The twin sisters, one in black and the other in white, had beautiful faces and graceful figures. Their auras seemed to echo and be closely connected to each other. Usually, any man would take a few more glances at such a dazzling scene, but at this moment, Bai Ya did not look at them. The reserved smile on her face was almost stiff. She cursed Yang Kai in her heart. It's fine if you want to come to the 100-spirit continent, but why do you have to drag me here? I'm a half-saint, but I feel like a lamb falling into a tiger's den. Chapter 3575. Senior, I don't have any flowers growing on my body. Why are you looking at me like that? In the hall, Yang Kai touched his nose and looked at Changtian, who had been staring at him since he came in. Changtian smiled and nodded. Not bad, not bad. I was right about you. Now that you have that opportunity, your chances of becoming a demon saint will be greatly increased. In 100 years, the 100-spirit continent will have a successor. The Battle of Eternity Heaven shook the world. Even though the 100-spirit continent was closed, it was still able to hear the news. Changtian didn't have much lifespan left, so he wanted to train Yang Kai as his successor so that he could take charge of the 100-spirit continent in the future and protect the many divine spirits on this continent. However, even though Changtian wanted to, he knew that the peak of the martial Tao was not so easy to reach. Now, even the opportunity of the great emperors was snatched by Yang Kai. As long as Yang Kai could take it step by step, he might be able to see Yang Kai standing at the top of the demon territory before he died. At that time, he would have nothing to worry about, and the many saint spirits on this continent would have someone to rely on. Since you have such an opportunity, don't show your face casually outside in the future. Just stay in the 100-spirit continent. I have already talked to Yu Meng. I don't think she will have any objections. Yang Kai smiled bitterly when he heard this. Changtian was implying that he should stay on the 100-spirit continent in the future and cultivate diligently until he became a demon saint. Yang Kai could naturally feel Changtian's love for him. However, time waited for no man. Yang Kai did not have the time to cultivate in seclusion here. The goal of becoming a demon saint was still too far away for him. The battle of the two realms was in full swing. His family, women, and friends were all in the star world. How could he hide in this paradise with peace of mind? He was afraid that the star world would be long gone by the time he became a demon saint. After pondering for a moment, Yang Kai said, I understand Senior's thoughts, but Senior, have you never thought of leading the 100-spirit continent out of this rut? Although the 100-spirit continent is very big, isn't it a little too small for you? Changtian's eyes flashed when he heard this. The corners of his mouth curled up and he said with a smile, What do you want to say? Yang Kai looked at him with burning eyes and said, I want to say that with Senior's ability, you shouldn't be trapped in a mere 100-spirit continent. Think about the 12, demon saint, each of them controls dozens of continents. Senior's ability is no weaker than the 12 demon saints. Why do you only occupy a small 100-spirit continent? Senior is a dragon race, and the dragon race is the leader of all creatures. You should roam the 9 heavens and not be trapped in a puddle. Changtian's eyelids drooped slightly as he said, there was no 100-spirit continent in the demon territory. I spent half of my life fighting for it. The territory of the demons is indeed very large, with hundreds and thousands of continents. However, there is only one of me, and it is difficult for me to do anything alone. Senior, you still have me. You. Chang Tian raised his eyebrows and looked at him. He suddenly laughed. You have a big appetite, but you still need to have the corresponding strength to protect you. Yang Kai slowly shook his head and said, Senior, you misunderstood me. I didn't have the intention to encourage you to seize the territories of the demon saint. The territory of the demons has long been falling apart. What's the point of seizing other people's territories? Perhaps in less than 100 or 1,000 years, the territories that you have seized will be destroyed. At that time, it will be useless. Let's not talk about anything else. Let's talk about the 100-spirit continent. Who knows when the 100-spirit continent will be separated from the demon territory and follow in the footsteps of those disappeared continents? When that time comes, where will you go? What will happen to the billions of creatures in the 100-spirit continent? After a pause, Yang Kai said, Moreover, although you are content with your territory, the war between the two realms will sweep across the entire territory of the demons sooner or later. Can you and the 100-spirit continent really stay out of it when that time comes? As soon as he said that, Chang Tian's face darkened. Yang Kai continued, If I can see it, I'm sure you have already expected it. Although the war between the two realms was tragic now, it had not reached the critical moment yet. Therefore, the 100-spirit continent could still stay out of it. However, if it really reached the critical moment, how could the demon saint in the demon territory allow the 100-spirit continent to stay out of it? When that time came, they would definitely join forces to pressure the 100-spirit continent and force it to join the war. When that time came, Chang Tian would have no choice but to agree under pressure. Otherwise, the 100-spirit continent would be placed on the opposite side of the demon territory. When that time came, the 100-spirit continent would end up in an even worse state. If the demon saint really hardened their hearts and joined forces, the 100-spirit continent could still be destroyed. Do you have a solution? Chang Tian raised his eyes and looked at Yang Kai suspiciously. Yang Kai suddenly said this to him. Obviously, it was not without reason, so he could not help but have a lot of guesses. I'm still in the process of figuring it out. I can't say for sure that it will succeed, but at least I have a direction. If this is successful, not only will it extinguish the war between the two realms, I can even find a better place for the 100-spirit continent and all the demon race. Extinguish the war between the two realms. Even though Chang Tian was experienced and knowledgeable, he could not help but be a little stunned at this moment. Yang Kai's words were a little boastful. The war between the two realms was extraordinary. It was a battle for survival, so it would definitely be a life-and-death struggle. Unless one side was completely defeated or wiped out, it would not stop at all. In comparison, finding a better place for the 100-spirit continent and all the demon race seemed less sensational. If it were someone else who said this, Chang Tian would have thrown him out long ago to avoid wasting time. However, he had high hopes for Yang Kai and hoped that he could protect the 100-spirit continent in the future. At this time, even if he was unwilling to believe it, he could only ask, Tell me in detail, what are your plans? Yang Kai hesitated for a long time, then looked like he had made an important decision. He looked up at Chang Tian and said, Senior, you should see it with your own eyes. See? Chang Tian raised his eyebrows. Yang Kai extended a hand to him. If Senior trusts me, please relax and don't resist. Seeing this, Chang Tian frowned. He did not know what Yang Kai was planning, but he also extended his hand and placed it in Yang Kai's palm. With his strength, he was very confident in his own strength, so he was not worried about Yang Kai's schemes. In the next moment, he saw Yang Kai grinning at him. Then, his vision blurred, and he suddenly appeared in a strange world. Chang Tian was stunned for a moment and turned his head to look around. He saw that this was no longer his dark and cold hall. It could even be said that this was not any place in the 100-spirit continent. This world made him feel a little uncomfortable. As soon as he entered, he felt that there was an invisible shackle binding him. It was the omnipresent power of heaven and earth. This invisible shackle prevented him from using too much power, so he could not use the power of a demon saint, but he could not use the power of a demon saint. This made Chang Tian's expression change slightly. He thought that he had misjudged and accidentally fell into Yang Kai's trap. But soon, he threw away this thought because Yang Kai was standing next to him defenselessly. If Yang Kai really wanted to do something to him, he would never put on such a defenseless posture. Instead, this kid looked forward with a leisurely face. He stretched out his hand and said, "Senior, what do you think of this place?" "Where is this?" Chang Tian frowned and asked. Just now, he clearly felt a trace of space shifting, but before he could feel it carefully, he had already arrived here from the hall. As he spoke, he released his divine sense, but he could not detect the boundary of this world. "This is a world. I call it the small sealed world." "Small sealed world?" Chang Tian frowned, and then his eyes flashed with a terrifying light. "A great world? Is this place a great world? It can barely be considered one. You actually found another great world." Chang Tian was shocked. Although people like Chang Tian knew that there was definitely more than one great world in the star boundary outside the demon territory. Perhaps in this vast universe, there were thousands of great worlds, but so far, the demon territory had only intersected with the star boundary. As for where the other great worlds were and how to get there, no one knew. But Yang Kai actually found a great world and even knew the entrance to this great world. How could Chang Tian not be shocked? In an instant, Chang Tian understood what Yang Kai meant. If he could really go back and forth freely in this great world, he could indeed jump out of the rut of the 100-spirit continent. He would no longer have to worry about being suppressed by the demon saint in the future when the war of the two worlds heated up. He would also not have to worry about the 100-spirit continent falling apart one day, leaving hundreds of millions of people homeless. However, this thought only lingered in his mind for a moment before the fire in Chang Tian's heart cooled down. He slowly shook his head and said, "This world is not suitable for high-level creatures to live in. It is not perfect." With his insight, he was naturally able to perceive the shortcomings of the newly expanded territory of the mysterious small world. If not for this, the invisible shackles of the world energy would not have been placed on him. Compared with the demon territory, this world was undoubtedly much inferior. Such a great world was just a facade. Yang Kai smiled slightly. Senior's vision is like a torch, but does Senior know what this world was like in the beginning? Chang Tian laughed. "How would I know?" He was stunned for a moment before he turned to look at Yang Kai. "Do you know?" Yang Kai said leisurely, "Of course I know, because this world was created by me." "You created it?" Chang Tian's eyes widened, wondering if there was something wrong with his hearing. After the Battle of Eternal Heaven, did Senior go to the Eternal Heaven continent? Yang Kai suddenly asked an irrelevant question. Ahem. Chang Tian clenched his fist and coughed lightly. This king was in the Eternal Heaven continent at that time. This time, it was Yang Kai's turn to be startled. He had instinctively thought that Chang Tian would definitely investigate something as important as the Battle of Eternal Heaven, but who would have thought that Chang Tian would actually be in the Eternal Heaven continent on that day? Chapter 3576. After all, it was a battle between the great emperors and the demon saint. It was very likely to change the future of the two worlds, so it was reasonable for Chang Tian to pay attention to it. Then it's easy to explain. Yang Kai nodded gently. Senior must have seen the situation of the Eternal Heaven after that great battle. Heaven and earth were shattered, the world collapsed, the continents formed, and the world principles collapsed. How could a small continent withstand the full power of the demon saint and the great emperors? Chang Tian looked solemn. If I tell Senior that this world was even worse than the shattered Eternal Heaven continent in the beginning, I don't know if Senior will believe me. Chang Tian turned his head, his pupils shrinking slightly. Yang Kai stared back at him, his expression calm and his eyes pure. After a long while, Chang Tian slowly shook his head. It's not that this king doesn't want to believe you, it's just that this matter is too unbelievable. Yang Kai smiled and said, Senior should know that many continents in the demon territory have disappeared over the past thousands of years. Those disappeared continents were separated from the demon territory because of the world gates, and no one can enter them. After so many years, no one knows what the situation is inside those disappeared continents. Chang Tian frowned. You know? Yang Kai nodded. I can enter those disappeared continents, but those continents are different from what most people think. They are not intact, but have fallen apart long ago. They are even worse than the eternal heaven continent after the great battle. The world Senior is seeing now is the result of the fusion of those disappeared continents and the eternal heaven continent. Senior, don't you feel that the world principles and world energy here are somewhat similar to those in the demon territory? How could Chang Tian not feel it? He felt it the moment he entered. This world gave him the feeling that it was a weakened version of the demon territory. He didn't know why before, but now that he heard Yang Kai's explanation, he suddenly understood. Even though the world principles of a great world and a great world were similar, it was absolutely impossible for them to be exactly the same. For example, the star boundary and the demon realm's territory had different world principles and different world principles, but this mysterious small world had too many similarities with the demon realm's territory. Even though Yang Kai's explanation was reasonable, Chang Tian still found it hard to believe. How did you reunite the missing continents? In comparison, Yang Kai's ability to enter the long-vanished continents was not as shocking. Since he was proficient in the laws of space and could repair, maintain, and even seal world gates, it would not be a problem for him to reopen the world gates that had disappeared. I wonder if Senior has heard of the heaven-devouring Great Emperor's tactics? Yang Kai asked with a smile. Chang Tian shook his head and said, never heard of it. Unlike the many demon saint, Chang Tian knew nothing about the star boundary. If it were any other demon saint here, they might not be unfamiliar with the heaven-devouring Great Emperor's tactics. Since they dared to invade the star boundary, they must have put in a lot of effort to gather information about the star boundary. The heaven-devouring Great Emperor's tactics are a peerless secret art created by a senior in my star boundary. It has the ability to devour the heavens and earth. This senior's name is Wukong, and he became one of the Great Emperors tens of thousands of years ago. It can even be said that he is the strongest among the Great Emperors. The greatest feature of the heaven-devouring Great Emperor's tactics is that it can devour everything in the world and turn them into its own. However, this senior was confident in his strength and invincible, and did many things that angered the heavens. As the saying goes, when the heavens are unhappy, karma is not empty. In the end, this senior incurred public anger, and the other great emperors joined forces to kill him. In that battle, he killed 4 great emperors of the same level by himself, but in the end, he was beaten to death. Chang Tian couldn't help sucking in a breath of cold air. He killed 4 great emperors of the same level. It was difficult for people who didn't reach this position to imagine how difficult this matter was. Chang Tian was also a character on the level of great emperors. Looking at the entire demon territory, he wasn't afraid of any of the other 12 demon saint. He had even fought the first demon saint, Huang Wuji, alone, but it was impossible for him to kill 4 demon saints with his own strength. Let alone 4. As long as any demon saint intervened in his duel with Huang Wuji, he wouldn't be his opponent. At their level of cultivation, they had already reached the peak, and there wasn't much difference between them, so standing at the peak, Chang Tian could more and more understand the terror of the heaven-devouring Great Emperors, Wukong. Yes. Yang Kai looked solemn. That battle was called the Battle of Emperors in Star Boundary, and the battlefield was the Shattered Star Sea. Chang Tian looked fascinated and murmured, Wukong, the Great Emperors of Heaven-devouring Great Emperor, a peerless genius. If I could compete with such a character in my lifetime, my life would not have been in vain. What a pity, what a pity. Yang Kai smiled slightly and didn't tell him that Wukong had come back from the dead, and now he had merged with the great emperors of the mortal world, forming a wonderful balance. Since that battle, the name of the Great Emperors of Heaven-devouring Great Emperor has spread for tens of thousands of years, and his fame hasn't diminished. He is also recognized as the first great emperors in Star Boundary since ancient times. The heaven-devouring Great Emperor he created is the most evil and powerful secret art in Star Boundary. Chang Tian's expression changed when he heard this. That secret art has fallen into your hands now? Originally, they were talking about the Great World, but Yang Kai suddenly changed the topic to the heaven-devouring Great Emperors. Chang Tian's mind was so sharp that he immediately saw through it. Yang Kai nodded and said, yes, when I first entered Star Boundary, this junior had interacted with the descendants of Wukong and was lucky enough to obtain the heaven-devouring Great Emperor secret art. But at that time, this junior's cultivation had reached a certain level, and I didn't intend to cultivate another secret art, so I left it aside. Later, I learned that the heaven-devouring Great Emperor secret art is not something that everyone can cultivate. Although this secret art is powerful, it has great drawbacks. Now it seems that I'm quite lucky. If he had really cultivated the heaven-devouring Great Emperor secret art back then, his mind might have already been distorted. Although his physical fitness was strong, he was inferior to a Dharma body in some aspects. Chang Tian gently nodded and said, "The more powerful a secret art is, the harsher the requirements are. The way of heaven is to take from the excess and make up for the deficiency. This is the only reasonable way." Yang Kai continued, "This junior also has a thing called the sealed world bead, which has a world of its own inside." He pointed forward and said, "This is the prototype of this world. Whether it is the heaven-devouring Great Emperor secret art or the sealed world bead, there is nothing special about either one, but when this junior combined the two, a very magical thing happened." What happened? Even though he had some guesses in his heart, Chang Tian couldn't help but ask. The small sealed world can actually devour other spaces to strengthen itself, which is why Senior saw the scene today. Chang Tian turned his head and looked around, sighing, "No wonder this world is so vast, but it is uninhabited." Since it was a new world formed by devouring those disappeared continents, naturally, there were no living creatures. After thinking about it, Chang Tian said, "But didn't you say that you didn't cultivate the heaven-devouring Great Emperor secret art? How did you combine it with the sealed world bead?" Yang Kai smiled and said, "This junior indeed didn't cultivate it, but this didn't prevent this junior from using the heaven-devouring Great Emperor secret art to stimulate the sealed world bead. If it weren't for the embodiment, Yang Kai wouldn't have been able to do this. It was because the embodiment had cultivated the heaven-devouring Great Emperor secret art and had a very deep understanding of this peerless secret art that Yang Kai could use the information transmitted to him by the embodiment to successfully stimulate the heaven-devouring Great Emperor secret art. Inconceivable, truly inconceivable." Chang Tian clicked his tongue in wonder. "If what you said is true, the disappeared continents could form the current situation, and if you let your sealed world bead devour those intact continents, Senior's thoughts are exactly what I want." Yang Kai nodded solemnly. "The demon territory is falling apart, and there aren't many continents left. Sooner or later, they will disappear from the map of the demon territory. Instead of letting them disappear, it's better to let me devour them and rebuild a new world. If this can really be done, then all the creatures in the demon territory can settle down in this new world, and the war between the two worlds can end. Even Senior and everyone in the 100-spirit continent can find a home in this new world, and you don't have to hide in a corner and be bullied by other demon saint." As soon as this was said, Chang Tian's eyes flashed as if he saw a broad road paved under his feet. But with his strength, even if he valued Yang Kai very much, he couldn't be persuaded with just a few words. After a while, Chang Tian calmly said, "The sealed world bead is one of your trump cards, right? Aren't you afraid of exposing it in front of this king? Something that could potentially evolve into a great world was a precious treasure to anyone, and even those demon saint would be jealous of it." Yang Kai smiled when he heard this. "The sealed world bead is indeed this junior's trump card, but since this junior has this idea, its existence will be revealed to the world sooner or later. In the early years, this junior hid the sealed world bead because this junior's strength wasn't enough to protect such a treasure. But now, this junior is a high-rank demon king, and I have some ability to protect myself. So what if this junior is exposed? Besides, although the sealed world bead is precious, it's just an inanimate object. It needs the cooperation of the heaven-devouring Great Emperor's battle technique to have the ability to devour space. And the heaven-devouring Great Emperor's battle technique, besides Wukong, this junior is the only one who has mastered it." Chang Tian chuckled, "You're telling me this today because you want this king to help you?" Yang Kai said seriously, "Creating a new world is not something this junior can do alone, and in the entire demon territory, only Senior is worthy of my trust. I hope Senior can lend me a hand." Yang Kai didn't know if Chang Tian was worthy of his trust. After all, They hadn't known each other for a long time, and he didn't understand Chang Tian's temperament. However, it was a fact that Chang Tian didn't have much lifespan left, and he had no one to rely on in the future of the 100-spirit continent. Therefore, with such a way out in front of him, Yang Kai believed that Chang Tian would make the right choice. Chang Tian didn't answer immediately, but his expression was solemn. After a long time, he slowly said, "It's not that this king doesn't want to believe you, but words have no proof. If this world can really evolve like you said, and eventually become an existence like the demon territory, then what's wrong with this king helping you? Then how does Senior want me to prove it?" Yang Kai asked. Chang Tian smiled, "1,000 words are better than seeing it with your own eyes." Chapter 3577. The thick door of the main hall opened a crack, and Yang Kai came out. 3 pairs of eyes looked at him from outside the door. They were Black Lotus, White Lotus, and Bai Ya. Seeing Yang Kai, Bai Ya couldn't help but sigh. Being stared at by 2 half-saint twins in this godforsaken place was really stressful. Yang Kai nodded slightly at Black Lotus and White Lotus and said, "Thank you for your hard work. I'll take my leave first." Black Lotus stepped forward and said, "Master, do you have any other orders?" Yang Kai smiled and said, "Senior is going into seclusion. I don't have any other orders." Black Lotus nodded and didn't say anything else. She watched Yang Kai and Bai Ya leave. After leaving the Bailing continent, he summoned the 500,000 proud snow ice guards and summoned wind. Yang Kai mounted his horse and said to Bai Ya, "Brother Bai Ya, you and I will go first. The proud snow ice guards will return on their own." Bai Ya nodded and said something to the 5 proud snow ice guards. Then, she and Yang Kai rushed to the nearby realm gate. Halfway there, Yang Kai asked, "Brother Bai Ya, which continent in Saint Master Bai Limo's territory doesn't have a half-saint?" Bai Ya didn't know why he asked this, but it wasn't a secret. She thought for a while and casually said a list of continents. Although Bai Limo controlled dozens of continents, not all of them had a master. She only had a dozen half-saint subordinates, less than 20 in total. A half-saint was in charge of a continent, and more than half of the continents were under the management of the high-rank Demon King, just like the situation of the Cloud Shadow continent. Then let's go to the Tianwu continent. Yang Kai randomly chose one. Although she didn't know why Yang Kai wanted to go to the Tianwu continent, Bai Ya still felt uneasy. She had a feeling that Yang Kai's trip to the Tianwu continent was not a good thing. At the same time, in the small sealed world, Chang Tian stood on the peak of the mountain, looking into the distance with his hands behind his back. A low-rank demon king stood behind him, trembling. From time to time, he looked up at Chang Tian's back, his forehead beaded with sweat. This low-rank demon king was none other than Hualun, was naturally the only resident of the territory. Originally, he was quite happy to see someone of the same race in this damned place. However, when he found out the identity of the person in front of him, he suddenly felt like he was walking on thin ice. He was the master of the 100-spirit continent, an existence comparable to the demon saint. Everyone in the demon region knew of Chang Tian's name. Hualun felt dizzy. A lowly nobody suddenly met the strongest existence in the world. No one could remain calm. What made Hualun feel the most uncomfortable was that this master had been standing there without moving since he arrived. He didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Just as he was feeling uneasy, Chang Tian suddenly asked, "How long have you been here?" The sudden voice startled Hualun. After he reacted, he immediately replying to Master, "This little one has been here for more than a year." "What did this place look like when you first came here?" Chang Tian asked again. Hualun said, "It's not much different from what Master sees now. It's just that the world energy and world principles in this place were not as good as they are now. Even our territory has expanded many times in the past year. Why are there such changes? This little one doesn't know." Hualun wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. This little one was caught and imprisoned here. One day, after 2 months, a huge crack suddenly appeared in the sky. Then, a lot of world fragments rushed in from the crack. Those fragments melted away before they fell to the ground. It felt like the world had digested them. Digested? Chang Tian raised an eyebrow. Yes. It's just like how we eat in the demon race. It's just that the speed of digestion is too fast. As the world fragments were digested, some changes gradually occurred in this world. Hualun cautiously looked at Chang Tian's back. He was hesitating whether he should tell Chang Tian about his harvest or not. When the world first changed, he picked up a lot of good things. He even picked up a semisage space ring. He didn't know whether Chang Tian's appearance here had anything to do with those things. But, what if Chang Tian wanted to take back those things if he spoke about it? That was something he couldn't get even in 100 lifetimes. Just as he was worrying about his gains and losses, Chang Tian said, "What is the crack in the sky like? What are the world fragments like? Tell me in detail." Hualun swallowed a mouthful of saliva and hurriedly recounted everything he had seen in the past year. Chang Tian didn't have any reaction and just listened, causing Hualun's heart to be in turmoil. He was afraid that he would say something wrong and be killed by this great figure before him. However, he was slightly relieved that Chang Tian didn't mention anything about the half-saint's relics. The Sky Martial continent was not close to the Bailing continent. However, after leaving behind the 500,000 proud snow ice guards, there was only Yang Kai and Bai Ya. Naturally, their speed was much faster than before. In just a few days, the two of them arrived at the Sky Martial continent. Yang Kai stopped when he rushed in from the realm gate. Bai Ya turned to look at him. "Brother Yang, why are you coming to the Sky Martial continent? Is there someone you know here?" "No." Yang Kai shook his head. "But I need this continent." "You need this continent?" Bai Ya frowned. "Brother Bai Ya, please don't be impatient. No matter what you see later, please don't be too surprised." Yang Kai smiled at him. "What do you mean?" Bai Ya was stunned. Yang Kai didn't answer. He just flipped his hand and a pearl suddenly appeared in his palm. Then, he threw the pearl into the air and formed a seal with both hands. He pointed at the pearl. A beam of profound light shot out and hit the bead. In the next moment, the light in the sky was suddenly covered and a huge shadow covered the land. Bai Ya looked up and couldn't help but gape. In the sky, a strange creature with a round body and a wide tail appeared. It looked like a fat fish. The creature was thousands of kilometers long and the shadow it cast covered the land for thousands of kilometers. As soon as the creature appeared, spatial cracks appeared and disappeared. At the same time, Bai Ya could clearly feel the space around the continent trembling. Layers of clear spatial ripples spread out in all directions with the huge creature as the epicenter. Wherever the invisible ripples passed, countless tiny cracks appeared. For some reason, in that instant, Bai Ya felt as if the entire Sky Martial continent was about to burst. Rolling. This was not the first time Bai Ya had seen a rolling. In the past year, he had been following Yang Kai and had been brought to the disappearing continent by Yang Kai. He had seen the rolling swallow the fragments of the continent with his own eyes. However, it was in the disappearing continent after all. Those continents were broken and no living creatures survived. Therefore, even though he was shocked, he didn't think there was anything wrong with it. He just thought it was a waste. However, this was the Sky Martial continent. This continent was still intact and there were hundreds of millions of living creatures living there. Yang Kai wanted to swallow it. He was crazy. "Brother Yang, what do you mean?" Bai Ya suddenly turned his head and looked at Yang Kai coldly. His killing intent was concealed. Yang Kai acted as if he didn't feel anything. He was still riding on Zui Feng. He smiled and said, "Brother Bai Ya, have you sent a message to the Lord about us coming to the Sky Martial continent?" Along the way, some of Bai Ya's little tricks could not be hidden from Yang Kai. In the past half a year, Bai Ya had been in contact with Bai Mo. However, Yang Kai pretended not to know about it. Anyway, in his plan, Bai Mo was the second person to know about his plan after Chang Tian. He had asked Bai Ya to let Bai Mo know in advance so that he didn't have to explain to her. Bai Ya said coldly, "The Lord is on the way. Brother Yang, please don't make a mistake." Yang Kai said, "That's good. I want to talk to her face to face." Bai Ya was stunned. She didn't expect young Kai to not even care about Bailey Mo. However, the current situation was critical. If she really let him do it, the Sky Marshal continent would disappear in a few days. The only person who could stop him now was herself. Even though she knew that Zui Feng was not to be trifled with, Bai Ya still said coldly, "Brother Yang, please stop. Otherwise, don't blame me for not remembering our old friendship." Yang Kai slowly shook his head and said, "Since I've already started, I can't stop now. Brother Bai Ya, why don't you ask the Lord again and see what her attitude is?" Bai Ya's face was solemn. She looked at Zui Feng, who was under Yang Kai's crotch. Her face revealed a trace of fear. She quickly took out an item to contact Bailey Mo and inform her of the situation. While he was conversing with Bailey Mo, Rolly had already opened its mouth wide enough to devour the heavens and earth, and plunged its head down. Silently, everything in the path of the rolling stone turned into nothingness. Even under Bai Ya's gaze, a city not far away was directly swallowed by the rolling stone. None of the millions of demon race living in the city escaped. Bai Ya's face suddenly became extremely ferocious. Just as she was about to act recklessly, Bailey Mo replied. Seeing the Lord's message, Bai Ya was stunned again. She clenched her fists angrily and said, "The Lord will be here soon. I hope Brother Yang can still be so calm by then." Yang Kai shrugged his shoulders indifferently. At the same time, in the small sealed world, Hualun shouted in surprise on top of a mountain, "Master, that crack, that crack. Every time that crack appears in the sky, fragments of the mainland will be swallowed up." He didn't need to remind him, as Chang Tian had already noticed it. Chang Tian squinted his eyes slightly and looked at the huge crack with anticipation. After a while, as Hualun said, fragments of the mainland were swallowed up. As if confirming his words, Hualun shouted excitedly, "See, Master, I was right. After these fragments are swallowed up, they will be digested immediately and nothing will be left behind." Chapter 3578. As soon as Hualun's voice fell, the fragment that was swallowed began to melt rapidly, as if it was really being digested by this world. In the blink of an eye, the huge fragment had shrunk significantly, and as it fell, its size was also shrinking at a speed visible to the naked eye. But after a short while, Hualun's mouth opened wide enough to fit a fist inside. That was because the fragment of the continent hadn't completely melted away. There was still a part left, and that part looked like a city. A city. Hualun couldn't believe his eyes. Over the past year or so, he had long been accustomed to the scene in front of him. Except for the first time when he had a harvest and picked up a lot of good things, most of the other times he had seen the same thing, but this was the first time a city had appeared here. Just as he was wondering if his eyes were playing tricks on him, some small black dots suddenly flew out from the city. Hualun focused his eyes and saw that these black dots were actually members of the demon race. These demon race members obviously lived in the city, and with such a sudden change, they all flew out of the city to investigate the situation. At first glance, the city that they had lived in for so long was actually floating in the air and slowly falling down, causing them to shout and shout. Because they were too far away, Hualun couldn't hear what they were saying, but he could clearly see the panic on their faces and their hand gestures. More and more black dots flew out from the city, densely packed, as if a swarm of locusts had appeared in the sky. But there were even more members of the demon race who weren't strong enough to stay in the city, running around in panic as if doomsday had arrived. What's going on? Hualun's face turned pale as he muttered to himself. Such a city, even in the entire territory of the demon race, was not small, so why was it swallowed up? And where did this city come from? Chang Tian still stood there, his body motionless, his expression as calm as an ancient well, but his eyes overflowed with excitement. A moment later, the city slowly landed on the ground. It was as if there was an invisible hand holding the bottom of the city and gently lowering it down. Apart from causing the city to shake slightly and some houses to collapse, the city did not suffer much damage. From this day onward, a new city of the demon clan would be built on the plains in the distance. Another crack appeared in the sky, and a fragment of the continent slowly emerged from it. Another crack appeared. In less than an hour, countless cracks had appeared in the sky. Fragments of the continent were constantly being swallowed by those cracks, and occasionally, some huge figures of cities would fall down. The world was undergoing some silent changes. Outside the sealed world bead, in the void, YA looked forward with a pale face, a chill spreading all over her body. Not everyone could witness the gradual encroachment of an intact continent. After the encroachment, the space would turn into nothingness and return to chaos. The undercurrent of the void would roll up a storm in that nothingness. Even though he was a semi-sage expert, he could still feel the danger in it. If he were to be sucked into it, he might get lost and never find the way back. Madman, this guy is simply a madman. YA turned his head, the corners of his eyes twitching as he stared at young Kai. How could he have imagined that this person would be so deranged? In such a short period of time, a perfectly good continent had been turned into such a mess by him. The Sky Marshal continent was destroyed. Even if the rolling stopped now, this continent would never return to how it was before. It could even be said that because a part of it had been swallowed up, the area where it was swallowed up formed a nothingness. Under the influence of this nothingness, the Sky Marshal continent would fall apart sooner or later. He kept reporting the situation here to Bei Li Mo, who was rushing over. There was no response from the Holy Senior, but YA could still feel Bei Li Mo's anger. This guy is dead. How dare he mess with the Holy Senior? The Holy Senior will definitely cut him into pieces without any room for negotiation. Thinking of this, YA looked at young Kai with some pity, but at the same time, she felt a little excited. If the Holy Senior really wants to kill young Kai in a fit of anger, wouldn't it be better for me to do it? I can take the opportunity to snatch the opportunity of the great emperors from him, and become a demon saint is just around the corner. After a day, about a fifth of the Sky Marshal continent had been swallowed up. The complete continent was like a pancake that had been taken a big bite out of. At this time, there was a fluctuation from the realm gate behind young Kai and YA. Then, Bei Li Mo suddenly appeared not far away. She had rushed all the way and finally arrived. Her pair of phoenix eyes swept around and immediately saw the endless nothingness. Feeling the strange aura from the nothingness, Bei Li Mo's expression changed slightly. Looking into the distance, she could faintly see a huge round object that was rolling around the edge of the Sky Marshal continent. Wherever it passed, the Sky Marshal continent would constantly shrink. It could be imagined that it would not be long before this huge object ate up the entire Sky Marshal continent. At that time, there would only be nothingness left. Young Kai, you're courting death. Bei Li Mo gritted her teeth and turned to glare at young Kai. Her murderous intent was almost tangible. Young Kai smiled and said, Holy Senior, why are you so angry? Looking at his nonchalant expression, Bei Li Mo was so angry that she couldn't help but laugh. This noble lady gave you everything you asked of me. I even gave you 500,000 proud snow ice guards, and even sent Boya to protect you. Is this how you repay me? While she was talking, YA had already secretly activated her magical energy. Once the Holy Senior gave the order, she would immediately attack young Kai. Since the Holy Senior was here, young Kai would not be able to do anything. YA seemed to see a golden continent under her feet, and she was a little excited. This was truly a case of the evils of heaven being forgiven, but the evils brought on by oneself were the hardest to bear. Young Kai nodded and said, I know that the Holy Senior has been good to me. That's why I want to show the Holy Senior a way out. As he spoke, he secretly sent a message to Bei Li Mo, don't make too much of a fuss. Don't blame me if you can't find a way out. Bei Li Mo's breath stagnated and she gritted her teeth. She laughed coldly and said, destroying my continent is a way out. Shouldn't I thank you? No need to thank me. Wait until you meet someone. Young Kai glanced at her. Who? Bei Li Mo frowned. Don't resist. Young Kai said and stretched out his hand. Bei Li Mo hesitated for a moment. She had indeed let her guard down. She had no choice but to let her guard down. She was now under the control of young Kai. There was no point in resisting in front of him. She might even let YA see through her. If that happened, she would lose face as the Holy Senior. His big hand gently patted Bei Limo's shoulder and she disappeared in an instant. Bai Ya was shocked and immediately shouted, "Yang Kai, what did you do to the holy senior?" In his anger, he even stopped calling him Brother Yang and called him by his name. Yang Kai glanced at him and said, "Brother Bai Ya, don't be impatient. If the holy senior is unwilling, what do you think I can do to her with my strength?" Hearing this, Bo Ya thought about it for a moment and felt that it made sense. Just now, it was obvious that the Saint Senior did not resist at all, so he had probably communicated with Yang Kai. Bo Ya was puzzled. The Sky Martial continent was already in such a state, so why didn't the Saint Senior hurry up and capture Yang Kai, instead trusting him so much? Inside the small sealed world, Chang Tian, who was watching the changes in the world, suddenly frowned and turned around. He saw a graceful figure suddenly appear behind him. Bei Limo? Chang Tian raised his brow. Chang Tian. Bei Limo looked over and her face darkened. At this time, she knew who Yang Kai wanted her to meet. She had long heard that the stinky brat had a good relationship with the 100-spirit continent. Chang Tian even gave away his mount in the past. Now it seemed that it was true. Bei. Hualun was dumbfounded. He trembled for a long time and couldn't say a complete sentence. If it was just the name Bei Limo, Hualun wouldn't have thought too much. The key point was that the silver-haired woman in front of him looked exactly like the rumors. She even dared to call out Chang Tian's name in front of the 100-spirit continent's master. In the entire demon territory, there was only one person with such an image. One of the 12 holy seniors, the snow demon master. Hualun only felt dizzy. It was rare to see a demon king like him, even a half-saint, let alone a demon saint. However, a master of the 100-spirit continent suddenly appeared in front of him a few days ago. Today, another snow demon master came. What the hell was this place? Why did it attract so many masters? In his panic, Hualun quickly bowed his head and greeted, "Greetings, holy senior." Bei Limo only glanced at him. She was surprised to see a low-ranked demon king by Chang Tian's side. She didn't pay much attention to him and just asked coldly, "Why are you here? Where is this place?" Just now, Yang Kai only asked her to relax her resistance. Then, she appeared in front of her in a blur. She didn't expect Chang Tian to appear in front of her. The relationship between the demon saint and Chang Tian wasn't very good. At this moment, Bei Limo couldn't help but be a little vigilant. She wondered if the stinky brat wanted to use Chang Tian to harm her. However, since he had planted the soul brand in her mind, there was no need for him to do anything unnecessary. "I have the same reason why you are here." Chang Tian laughed. In fact, he was also a little surprised that Bei Limo would appear here. "As for where this place is, didn't that young brat tell you?" Bei Limo snorted coldly. That stinky brat didn't say anything. She turned around and didn't see anyone else, so she asked suspiciously, "Where is that bastard?" Hey, speaking ill of others behind their backs is not something a holy senior should do. Yang Kai's voice suddenly came from above her head. "What can you do about this senior's actions?" Bei Limo was indignant. She released her divine sense but still couldn't find any trace of Yang Kai. She gritted her teeth and said, "Come out. What are you doing sneaking around?" You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,